Rain hammers the glass towers of Manhattan while Elena Vale runs bleeding through the Blackthorn Hotel's executive corridor, her silver gown torn, her ex-boyfriend Grant Mercer closing in behind her. She slips into a private elevator where Vincent Moretti stands waiting, cold, impossibly calm, dressed in shadows. When Grant forces the doors open and tries to drag her out, Vincent's restraint turns lethal. Without raising his voice, he destroys Grant publicly, shields Elena with his jacket, and delivers a promise that freezes the blood. Follow her tonight, and you'll spend the rest of your life wishing you hadn't. One elevator, two dangerous men. And Elena realizes she may have just traded one nightmare for something far worse. Stay with me until the end, hit that like button, and drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from. I want to see how far this story travels.
The Walmart.
The elevator doors opened onto the 42nd floor, and Elena Vale stumbled inside like a woman who'd just clawed her way out of a grave. Her silver gown hung torn at the shoulder. Blood smeared across her collarbone from where Grant's ring had caught her cheekbone during the argument. Her hands shook so badly she could barely punch the lobby button. The doors started closing. Then a hand shot through the gap. Elena's breath caught. She pressed herself against the back wall, her vision blurring with panic, certain Grant had followed her. But the man who stepped inside wasn't Grant Mercer. He was taller, darker, dressed entirely in black like he'd been carved from the storm outside. His eyes swept over her once, cold, calculating, missing nothing, then moved to the control panel where he pressed the button for the lobby without a word. Vincent Moretti. Elena recognized him from photographs in the business section. Everyone in Manhattan knew his name, even if they pretended not to. He owned half the construction contracts in the city. The other half belonged to people who owed him favors. Rumors followed him like shadows, money laundering, political bribes, connections to organized crime that no one could prove but everyone whispered about. And now she was trapped in an elevator with him while her face bled and her dress fell apart. Vincent stood with his hands clasped in front of him, staring straight ahead as the elevator began its descent. He didn't look at her again. Didn't speak. The silence stretched between them like a held breath. Elena tried to steady herself, tried to stop shaking, tried to look like a woman who hadn't just been thrown against a bathroom sink by a man she'd once loved. The elevator jolted, stopped. The doors slid open on the 40th floor. Grant Mercer stood in the corridor, his face flushed with alcohol and rage, his tie loosened, his shirt collar dark with sweat. His eyes locked onto Elena immediately. "There you are," Grant said, stepping forward. "We're not done talking." Elena's voice died in her throat. Grant moved into the elevator without invitation, reaching for her wrist. "You don't get to walk away from me like that. Not in front of everyone. Do you have any idea how that looked?" His fingers closed around her forearm, right over the bruises from 2 nights ago, and Elena flinched hard enough that her shoulder hit the wall. Vincent Moretti moved. Not fast. Not aggressive. Just a single step to the side that placed his body directly between Grant and Elena like a wall made of bone and expensive fabric. "Remove your hand," Vincent said quietly. Grant blinked, looked at Vincent like he'd just noticed him for the first time. "Excuse me?" "You heard me." Grant's jaw tightened. He was shorter than Vincent by 3 inches, softer around the middle despite the tailored suit. His hand was still wrapped around Elena's wrist, his grip tightening reflexively. "This doesn't concern you." "You're wrong." "She's my girlfriend." "She's bleeding," Vincent interrupted, his voice dropping lower. "And you're the reason." Grant's face flushed darker. "Women get emotional at parties. It happens. We had a disagreement. It's none of your business." "Your hand is still on her." "Because she's being dramatic." Vincent's expression didn't change. His tone didn't rise, but something shifted in the air between them. Something cold and inevitable like ice cracking underfoot. "Remove your hand," Vincent repeated, "or I'll remove it for you." The threat hung in the elevator like smoke. Grant's face twisted. He released Elena's wrist and stepped back, raising both hands in mock surrender. "Jesus Christ, fine. You want to play hero? Go ahead." He looked past Vincent at Elena, his eyes narrowing. "But we both know what she is. A week from now, you'll see it too." Vincent reached up and unbuttoned his jacket, slipped it off his shoulders in one smooth motion, turned slightly, and draped it over Elena's bare shoulders without looking at her directly. The jacket was still warm from his body. It smelled like expensive cologne and rain. Grant stared. "You've got to be kidding me." Vincent pressed the button for the lobby again. "You're leaving." "Like hell I am. This elevator is going down. You can leave now, or you can leave when security pulls you out at the bottom. Your choice." Grant's hands curled into fists. For a moment, Elena thought he might actually swing, might actually be stupid enough to throw a punch at Vincent Moretti in an enclosed space. But whatever Grant saw in Vincent's eyes made him reconsider. He stepped backward into the corridor, his face contorted with humiliation and rage. "You don't know who you're messing with," Grant said, his voice shaking. "My family has connections, real connections, not whatever bullshit criminal empire you think makes you untouchable." Vincent reached out and pressed the door close button. "If you follow her tonight," Vincent said as the doors began sliding shut, "you'll spend the rest of your life wishing you hadn't." The doors closed. The elevator descended. Elena couldn't breathe. Her heart hammered against her ribs. Her hands wouldn't stop shaking. She pulled Vincent's jacket tighter around her shoulders and tried to make herself smaller against the back wall. Vincent stood perfectly still, staring at the floor indicator above the doors. 20 floors passed in silence. "Thank you," Elena finally whispered. Vincent didn't respond immediately. When he did, his voice was flat, businesslike. "Do you have somewhere safe to go tonight?" Elena opened her mouth, closed it. The truth was too humiliating to say out loud. Grant knew where she lived, knew where she worked, knew the names of everyone she cared about. "I'll figure it out," she said. "That's not what I asked." "I don't—" Her voice cracked. "I don't know." The elevator reached the lobby. The doors opened onto the gleaming marble entrance hall, where the gala continued in the ballroom beyond. Music drifted through the space. Laughter. The clink of champagne glasses. A world that felt impossibly far away. Vincent stepped out first, turned back to face her. "Stay here," he said. Then he walked toward the security desk without waiting for a response. Elena watched him go, her mind racing. She should leave. Should run out the front doors and disappear into the rain before Grant came looking for her. Before Vincent changed his mind about helping. Before this entire nightmare got worse. But her legs wouldn't move. Vincent returned 3 minutes later with a tall man in a dark suit who carried himself like former military. The man nodded once at Elena, his expression professionally neutral, then took up a position near the elevator bank where he could watch both the lobby entrance and the corridor leading to the ballroom. "Marco will make sure you get to your car safely," Vincent said. "If your ex-boyfriend comes down here, Marco will handle it." Elena stared at him. "Why are you doing this?" "Because no one else will." The answer was so blunt it knocked the air from her lungs. Vincent reached into his pocket and produced a business card. Plain, black, just a phone number embossed in silver. "If he shows up at your home tonight, call that number. Someone will come." Elena took the card with trembling fingers. "I don't understand." "You don't have to." "But—" "Go home," Vincent said quietly. "Lock your doors. Don't open them for anyone." Then he turned and walked back toward the ballroom like a man who just handled a minor inconvenience instead of potentially saving someone's life. Elena stood frozen in the lobby, Vincent's jacket heavy on her shoulders, his business card clutched in her hand, watching him disappear into the crowd. She didn't know it yet, but her life had just been split into two halves, everything before the elevator and everything after. The apartment felt smaller when Elena got home. She locked the door. Checked it twice, dragged a chair from the kitchen and wedged it under the handle the way her mother had taught her when she was 16 and they'd lived in the studio with the broken lock. Then she stood in the dark living room, still wearing Vincent's jacket, and waited for Grant to show up. He didn't come that night. He came the next morning instead. Not in person. That would have been simpler. Elena's phone started ringing at 7 a.m. Her gallery manager. Panicked, apologetic. Apparently someone had posted a series of photos online. Elena leaving the gala covered in blood, stumbling out of the hotel, looking drunk and unstable. The captions called her a liability, questioned her professionalism, suggested she had substance abuse problems. The photos had been taken by Grant's friends. By noon, 3 clients had canceled their contracts. By 2 p.m., her name was trending on social media with speculation about mental health crises and professional misconduct. By 4 p.m., the Florence Restoration Project, the contract she'd spent 2 years pursuing, sent an email withdrawing their offer. Elena sat on her apartment floor surrounded by her laptop and phone, watching her career dissolve in real time, and finally understood what Grant had meant when he'd told her she'd regret walking away. He wasn't going to hit her again. He was going to destroy her piece by piece until there was nothing left. 3 days later, Vincent Moretti's business card was still sitting on Elena's kitchen counter, where she'd left it the night of the gala. She hadn't called. Calling would mean admitting she needed help. Calling would mean involving herself further with a man whose reputation was built on violence and corruption. Calling would mean trading one dangerous situation for another. So instead, Elena tried to fight back on her own. She hired a lawyer who took her money and then stopped returning calls. She reported the harassment to the police who took notes and did nothing. She posted her own response online, defending herself against the rumors, but it only made things worse. More photos surfaced, more speculation, more whispers. Grant's friends were everywhere. They worked at the same firms, attended the same events, knew the same people. And they all believed Grant's version of the story, that Elena was unstable, vindictive, desperate for attention. By the end of the week, Elena had lost 6 clients, 2 gallery partnerships, and any chance of salvaging her professional reputation. She sat alone in her apartment Friday night, staring at her bank account on her laptop screen, doing the math. 3 months. Maybe 4 if she stopped eating out entirely. Then she'd be broke. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. Elena stared at the screen, her stomach twisting. She'd stopped answering unknown calls 3 days ago after the 5th reporter tried to interview her about the incident at the gala. But something made her answer this time. Hello? Miss Vale. The voice was male, calm, professional. My name is Marco. We met briefly at the Blackthorn Hotel. Elena's breath caught. The security guard. Vincent's man. I remember, she said carefully. Mr. Moretti asked me to check in, make sure you were safe. I'm fine. Are you? The question was so direct it knocked her off balance. Why does he care? That's not my business to say. But if you're in trouble, Miss Vale, Mr. Moretti can help. Elena closed her eyes. I don't need help. Grant Mercer has filed a restraining order against you. Did you know that? The words hit her like a physical blow. What? It was filed this morning. Claims you've been harassing him since the gala, showing up at his office, sending threatening messages. It's not true, obviously, but it doesn't matter. By Monday, every major news outlet in the city will be reporting it. Elena's hand tightened around the phone. How do you know this? Mr. Moretti has resources. Then why isn't he the one calling me? Silence. Then Marco said quietly, because he wanted to give you the choice. Elena's throat closed. What choice? To walk away or to let him help? And if I say yes, what does he want in return? Nothing. That's not how the world works. It's how Mr. Moretti works. Elena laughed, a sharp, bitter sound. He's a criminal. Yes, Marco said simply. And criminals understand how to fight people who use the system as a weapon. The line went quiet. Elena stared at the wall of her apartment, at the paintings she'd collected over the years, at the life she'd built that was now collapsing around her. I need to think about it, she whispered. You have until Sunday. After that, the story goes public, and Mr. Moretti won't be able to help. The call ended. Elena sat in the dark, Vincent's business card in her hand, and tried to figure out how she'd ended up here. A week ago, she'd been an art conservator with a successful career and a plan for her future. Now she was unemployed, publicly humiliated, and being offered protection by one of the most dangerous men in Manhattan. All because she'd stepped into the wrong elevator. Or maybe the right one. But Sunday came too fast. Elena spent the weekend alone, turning Marco's words over in her mind like stones. Every time she convinced herself to walk away, to handle this on her own, another client would cancel. Another friend would stop answering her calls. Another piece of her life would crumble. By Sunday evening, she understood the truth. Grant wasn't going to stop. He was going to keep destroying her until there was nothing left to destroy. So at 8 p.m., standing in her kitchen with her hands shaking, Elena dialed the number on Vincent Moretti's card. It rang once. Miss Vale. Vincent's voice was exactly as she remembered. Low, controlled, unsettlingly calm. How did you know it was me? I've been waiting for your call. Elena's breath caught. Marco said you could help. I can. What does that mean? It means I stop the bleeding, pull the restraining order, correct the narrative, make sure Grant Mercer understands that touching you again, physically or professionally, will have consequences he can't survive. The certainty in his voice should have been comforting. Instead, it terrified her. Why? Elena whispered. Why do you care? Silence stretched across the line. Then Vincent said quietly, because I watched my mother die trying to escape a man like Grant, and every person who could have helped her chose not to. The confession hit Elena like a punch to the chest. I'm sorry, she whispered. Don't be. Just tell me if you want my help. Elena closed her eyes, thought about the elevator, about Grant's hand on her wrist, about Vincent's jacket warm around her shoulders. Yes, she said. I want your help. Good. Pack a bag. Enough for a week. Marco will be at your apartment in 20 minutes. Wait, what? Where am I going? Somewhere safe. I'm not leaving my home. Your home isn't safe anymore, Vincent interrupted, his voice hardening slightly. Grant knows where you live. His friends know where you live. If you stay there, this gets worse. And if I go with you, it gets better? Yes. Just like that? Just like that. Elena's laugh came out shaky. You sound very sure of yourself. I am. Why? Because I don't lose. The line went dead. Elena stood in her kitchen, the phone still pressed to her ear, her heart hammering against her ribs. 20 minutes. She had 20 minutes to decide if she was really going to do this, really going to trust a man she didn't know, really going to step deeper into a world she didn't understand. But the alternative was staying here, waiting for Grant to destroy her completely. So Elena grabbed a duffel bag from her closet and started packing. Marco arrived exactly 20 minutes later. He didn't come alone. 2 more men in dark suits flanked him in the hallway outside Elena's apartment. Silent, watchful, built like they'd been hired for violence rather than conversation. Miss Vale, Marco said politely. Are you ready? Elena tightened her grip on her duffel bag. Where are we going? Mr. Moretti's estate, about an hour north. And if I change my mind, then we'll bring you back. Just like that? Just like that. Elena looked past him at the 2 silent men. They're coming too? For your protection. Or to make sure I don't run. Marco's expression didn't change. Miss Vale, if you wanted to run, we'd let you. But right now, running means going back to the apartment where Grant Mercer knows you live. Is that really what you want? Elena's throat tightened. No, it wasn't. She followed Marco down to the black SUV idling at the curb. The 2 silent men took positions in the front seats. Marco opened the back door for her like she was something fragile instead of something terrified. Elena climbed inside. The door closed. The SUV pulled away from the curb, carrying her toward Vincent Moretti's world. And Elena realized with sudden, crushing clarity that there was no going back from this. Whatever happened next, her life would never be the same. The city blurred past the tinted windows, lights and rain and shadows, and Elena pressed her forehead against the glass, trying to remember the last time she'd felt safe. She couldn't. Maybe she never had. The estate appeared through the rain like something out of a fever dream. Stone walls, iron gates that opened without anyone touching them, a driveway that curved through manicured gardens where sculpted hedges loomed in the headlights like sentries. The house itself sprawled across the hilltop, 3 stories of dark stone and tall windows that glowed amber against the storm. Elena pressed her palm against the car window, her breath fogging the glass. Jesus, she whispered. Marco glanced back from the front seat. Mr. Moretti will meet you inside. The SUV stopped beneath a covered portico. One of the silent men opened Elena's door. Rain hammered the stone columns. Wind tore at her jacket as she climbed out, her duffel bag heavy in her hand. The front door opened before she reached it. A woman stood in the entrance, mid-50s, gray hair pulled back severely, wearing a dark dress that looked more like armor than clothing. Her eyes swept over Elena once, clinical and assessing. Miss Vale, the woman said. Her accent was faint, Italian, maybe. I'm Sophia. I manage the house. Come inside before you drown. Elena stepped into the entrance hall and stopped. The space was massive. Marble floors, a staircase that curved upward like a spine, paintings on the walls that looked old enough to belong in museums. But nothing felt ostentatious. Everything was precise, controlled, like the house itself had been designed by someone who valued function over display. Sophia closed the door behind her, shutting out the storm. Mr. Moretti is in his study. I'll show you to your room first. I can meet him now. Your clothes are wet. You're shaking. 5 minutes won't matter. Sophia turned and walked toward the staircase without waiting for agreement. Elena followed because she didn't know what else to do. The bedroom was on the second floor, large, austere, a four-poster bed with dark linens, a window that overlooked the gardens, an adjoining bathroom with heated floors and a shower big enough for 3 people. There are clothes in the closet, Sophia said, opening the door to reveal a walk-in space filled with women's clothing still bearing tags. Mr. Moretti had them brought in this afternoon. If the sizes are wrong, tell me. Elena stared. He bought me clothes? He anticipated you might need them. How did he know my size? Sophia's expression didn't change. Mr. Moretti notices details. She left before Elena could respond. Elena stood alone in the bedroom, her wet duffel bag dripping onto the hardwood floor, staring at the closet full of expensive clothes that fit her perfectly. Cashmere sweaters, silk blouses, designer jeans, everything in her size, everything in colors she actually wore. Her hands started shaking again. She stripped off her wet clothes and stepped into the shower, letting the hot water pound against her shoulders until her skin turned red. When she finally emerged, wrapped in a towel that cost more than her rent, she found her reflection in the mirror and barely recognized herself. Bruises still colored her cheekbone where Grant's ring had caught her. Dark circles shadowed her eyes. She looked like someone who'd been running for weeks instead of days. Elena dressed in jeans and a cream sweater from the closet. Both fit perfectly. She ran her fingers through her damp hair, gave up trying to make herself look presentable, and went to find Vincent. Halt. His study was on the first floor at the end of a long corridor. The door stood open. Warm light spilled into the hallway. Elena paused at the threshold, her heart hammering. Vincent sat behind a massive desk, reading something on his laptop, his profile sharp in the lamplight. He'd changed since the gala, traded the formal suit for dark pants and a black sweater that made him look younger. More human. Almost approachable. Then he looked up, and the impression shattered. His eyes were still cold, still calculating, still missing nothing. Miss Vale, he said, closing the laptop. Come in. Elena stepped inside. The study was lined with bookshelves. A fireplace crackled against the far wall. The furniture was old, the kind of old that meant money going back generations. Sit, Vincent said, gesturing to the chair across from his desk. Elena sat, her hands twisted together in her lap. Thank you for letting me stay here. You don't need to thank me. I don't understand why you're helping me. Vincent leaned back in his chair, studying her. I told you why. You said your mother... Elena's voice caught. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have brought it up. You didn't. I did. He paused. She died when I was 17. My father put her in the hospital 3 times before that. Each time she had somewhere she could have gone, people who could have helped. But no one wanted to get involved. Getting involved meant making an enemy of my father. So they looked the other way. The words were delivered without emotion, clinical, like he was describing something that had happened to someone else. Elena's throat tightened. I'm sorry. Stop apologizing. I don't know what else to say. Then don't say anything. Vincent stood, moving to the window where rain streaked the glass. Grant Mercer is connected to 3 senators and a federal judge. His family's investment firm manages portfolios for half the wealthy families in Manhattan. That's why no one will help you. Helping you means making enemies they can't afford. But you're helping me. I can afford enemies. Because you're... Elena hesitated. Because I'm a criminal? Vincent turned to face her. Yes. The bluntness knocked the air from her lungs. I'm not going to lie to you, Vincent continued. I'm not a good man. I've done things that would horrify you. But I'm also the only person willing to stand between you and Grant Mercer. So you need to decide right now if you can live with that." Elena stared at him, at the hard lines of his face, at the complete absence of apology in his eyes. "What happens if I say no?" she asked. "Marco drives you back to your apartment. I have my lawyers file countersuits to the restraining order. I use my connections to kill the worst of the media coverage. You go back to your life with significantly less damage than you have now." "And if I say yes?" "You stay here until this is over. I dismantle Grant's support network piece by piece. By the time I'm done, he won't have the resources or the reputation to come after you again." "How long will that take?" "Weeks, maybe months." Elena's breath caught. "I can't stay here for months." "Then you go back to Manhattan and hope Grant gets bored of destroying you." The words hit like a slap. Elena stood, her hands curling into fists. "You make it sound simple." "It is simple. You just don't like the options." "The options are staying here with a stranger or going back to be harassed by my ex-boyfriend." "Your ex-boyfriend who put his hands on you," Vincent interrupted, his voice dropping lower. "Who hit you hard enough to split your cheek open, who's now using his family's money and connections to destroy your career. Don't downplay what he did." Elena's jaw tightened. "I'm not—" "Yes, you are. You called him your ex-boyfriend instead of your abuser. You said harassed instead of terrorized. You're minimizing it because that's what women like you do. You make yourself smaller so the people hurting you feel bigger." The accusation hit so close to the truth that Elena flinched. Vincent's expression softened slightly. "I'm not trying to hurt you. I'm trying to make you see the situation clearly. Grant Mercer is not going to stop. Men like him never do. They escalate until someone makes them stop." "And you're that someone?" "Yes." Elena sank back into the chair, her hands shaking again. "I don't know if I can do this." "You're already doing it. I mean, stay here, with you. In this—" She gestured vaguely at the study, the house, the world he inhabited. "I don't belong here." Vincent moved back to his desk, sat down, folded his hands on the polished wood surface. "Neither did I once." The admission hung in the air between them. "What happened?" Elena asked quietly. "I learned to adapt." He paused. "You will too." Sophia brought dinner to the study an hour later. Elena hadn't realized how hungry she was until the smell hit her. Roasted chicken, fresh bread, vegetables that looked like they'd been pulled from a garden instead of a grocery store. Vincent cleared papers from his desk to make room for the plates. They ate in silence for several minutes, the only sound the scrape of silverware and the crackle of the fire. "The clothes fit," Vincent said finally. Elena looked up. "Yes, thank you. How did you—" Sophia has an eye for details. Sophia guessed my exact size? "I provided measurements." Elena's fork paused halfway to her mouth. "How do you know my measurements?" "I'm observant." "That's not an answer." Vincent's eyes met hers. "Would you prefer I'd gotten the sizes wrong?" "I'd prefer you tell me how you knew." "The gala, your dress, the way the fabric sat at your shoulders and waist. Basic mathematics from there." Elena stared at him. "That's insane." "That's survival." "What does that mean?" "It means I grew up in a world where missing details got you killed. So I learned not to miss them." The casual mention of violence made Elena's stomach twist. She set down her fork. "What world was that?" "Not one you need to know about." "You're asking me to trust you." "I'm asking you to let me help you," Vincent interrupted. "Trust is optional." "That's not how trust works." "It is in my experience." Elena laughed, sharp and bitter. "You have a very dark view of the world." "The world is dark. I'm just honest about it." They finished eating in silence. Afterward, Sophia appeared to clear the plates. Vincent stood, buttoning his cuffs like he was preparing to leave. "Your room is ready. If you need anything during the night, there's a phone on the bedside table. Dial 0. Someone will answer." "Someone?" "Security." "You have security inside the house?" "I have security everywhere." Elena followed him to the door of the study, her mind racing. "Vincent!" He turned. She didn't know what she'd been planning to say. "Thank you" felt insufficient. "I'm scared" felt too vulnerable. Instead, she just stood there, words dying in her throat. Vincent's expression softened slightly. You're safe here, Elena. Whatever else you believe about me, believe that. Then he left, his footsteps echoing down the corridor until the sound faded entirely. Elena stood alone in the empty study, surrounded by books and firelight and the lingering smell of dinner, and tried to convince herself she'd made the right choice. She failed. Sleep didn't come easily that night. Elena lay in the massive bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to the storm batter the windows. Every sound made her jump. Every creak of the old house made her imagine Grant finding her somehow, breaking through Vincent's security, dragging her back to Manhattan. At 3 a.m., she gave up on sleep entirely. She wrapped herself in the cashmere robe she'd found hanging in the bathroom and wandered downstairs looking for the kitchen. The house was dark except for small lights along the baseboards that guided her path. She found the kitchen on the first floor, massive, professional grade, all stainless steel and marble counters. And sitting at the center island, illuminated by a single pendant light, was Vincent. He looked up as she entered, a cup of coffee halfway to his lips. Can't sleep? Elena shook her head. Coffee? It's 3 a.m. That's not a no. Despite everything, Elena felt her mouth twitch into something almost like a smile. Yes. Coffee. Vincent poured a second cup from the French press on the counter, slid it across to her without ceremony. Elena wrapped her hands around the warm ceramic and took a sip. It was perfect. You make good coffee, she said. I make adequate coffee. Sophia makes good coffee. Is that her job? Making coffee for you at 3 a.m.? Sophia's job is managing the house. Making coffee for insomniacs is optional. Vincent leaned against the counter, studying her. What's keeping you awake? Elena stared into her cup. Everything? Be specific. I keep thinking Grant's going to show up. He won't. You can't know that. I have 12 men stationed around this property. Cameras on every entrance. Motion sensors in the gardens. If Grant Mercer comes within a mile of this estate, I'll know about it before he reaches the gates. The certainty in his voice should have been reassuring. Instead, it reminded Elena of exactly how different their worlds were. This is your normal, she said quietly. Armed guards. Security cameras. Living like you're at war. I am at war. With who? Everyone who wants what I have. Vincent took a drink of his coffee. You think I'm paranoid, but paranoia is just preparation without optimism. That's a depressing way to live. It's an effective way to stay alive. Elena set down her cup. Is that what you want? To just stay alive? What else is there? Living. Actually living. Not just surviving. Vincent's jaw tightened. You sound like someone who's never had to fight for survival. And you sound like someone who forgot there's supposed to be something on the other side of the fight. The words hung between them like a challenge. Vincent's eyes narrowed. You've been in my house for 6 hours, and you're already trying to fix me? I'm not trying to fix you. Then what are you doing? I'm trying to understand you. Why? Because I'm staying in your house, eating your food, wearing clothes you bought me, and I don't know anything about you except that you're dangerous and everyone's afraid of you. Vincent set down his cup with deliberate care. You want to know about me? Fine. I grew up in a house where violence was the only language anyone spoke. My father ran protection rackets in Brooklyn. My mother tried to leave him 6 times. The last time, he broke her ribs and her wrist and put her in the hospital. She died 3 days later from internal bleeding the doctors missed. Elena's breath caught. I was 17, Vincent continued, his voice flat. I killed my father 2 weeks after the funeral. Made it look like a rival crew did it. Took over his operations before anyone realized what happened. Spent the next 15 years building something bigger than he ever imagined. And every single day I remembered what it felt like to watch my mother die because no one would help her. The confession hit Elena like a physical blow. I'm sorry, she whispered. I don't want your sympathy. I'm telling you this so you understand who you're dealing with. I'm not a good man, Elena. I'm not someone you fix or save or redeem. I'm someone you use when the world gives you no other options. Elena's hands tightened around her coffee cup. Is that really all you think you are? It's all I've ever needed to be. That's not an answer. Vincent's expression hardened. It's the only answer you're getting. He turned and walked out of the kitchen, leaving Elena alone with her coffee and the weight of everything he'd just told her. She sat in the dark, listening to his footsteps fade into the house, and realized she'd just seen something Vincent Moretti never let anyone see. Not strength, not control, just the raw, bleeding edges of a man who'd built his entire life around a single moment of violence. Morning came gray and cold. Elena woke to find someone had left a tray outside her bedroom door. Coffee, toast, fresh fruit arranged in a small bowl, a note in precise handwriting. Breakfast is at 8 if you'd like to join. Sophia Elena ate in her room, watching rain streak the windows, trying to process everything from the night before. She kept hearing Vincent's voice, flat, emotionless, describing his mother's death like it was something that had happened to someone else. She kept seeing the look in his eyes when he'd said, "I'm not someone you fix or save or redeem," like he'd been daring her to try. Elena dressed in jeans and a dark sweater from the closet, pulled her hair back, tried to make herself look less like a refugee and more like a woman who had her life under control. She failed at that too. Downstairs, the house was quiet. Elena found Sophia in the kitchen, preparing vegetables for what looked like lunch. "Mr. Moretti is in the greenhouse," Sophia said without looking up from her cutting board. "If you're looking for him." "I wasn't." "The path is through the east garden. Follow the stone walkway past the fountain." Elena hesitated. "Does he want company?" "Mr. Moretti never wants company, but he might accept it." The greenhouse sat at the edge of the property, half hidden by old trees and overgrown hedges. It was massive, Victorian style. Glass panels fogged with condensation. The door stood open, releasing humid air into the cold morning. Elena stepped inside and stopped. The space was filled with plants. Not organized, not planned, just wild growth everywhere. Roses climbing the walls, herbs spilling from raised beds, fruit trees growing in massive pots. The air smelled like earth and green things, and something Elena couldn't quite name. Vincent stood at the far end, working on a rose bush that had climbed nearly to the ceiling. He'd rolled up his sleeves. His hands were dirty. He looked younger somehow, less controlled. "You found it," he said without turning around. "Sophia told me where to look." Of course she did. Vincent clipped a dead branch from the rose bush. "Sophia believes fresh air cures everything." Elena moved deeper into the greenhouse, running her fingers along a table covered in seedlings. "You did all this?" "Some of it. Most of it was already here when I bought the property. I just keep it alive." "This doesn't seem like something you'd care about." "Plants don't lie, don't betray you, don't expect anything except water and sunlight." He glanced back at her. "They're simpler than people." Elena picked up a small pot containing a struggling seedling. "This one's dying." "That one's already dead. I just haven't thrown it out yet." "Why not?" "Because giving up on things is easier than admitting you failed." The admission was so raw it made Elena's chest tighten. She set down the pot. "Last night, We don't need to talk about last night," Vincent interrupted. "Yes, we do." "No, we don't." He set down his pruning shears and turned to face her fully. "I told you things I shouldn't have, things that don't concern you. It won't happen again." "You think telling me about your mother was a mistake?" "Yes." "Why?" "Because now you're looking at me differently." "How am I looking at you?" Vincent's jaw tightened. "Like I'm something broken you can fix." "I don't think you're broken." "Yes, you do. You think underneath the criminal and the violence, there's some good person waiting to be saved. There isn't. This is who I am. All of me. The parts that help you and the parts that kill people. They're the same parts." Elena stepped closer. "You're trying to scare me off." "I'm trying to be honest." "No. You're trying to make yourself into something so terrible that I'll stop seeing you as human. But it's not working." Vincent's expression went very still. "You should be afraid of me." "Maybe, but I'm not." "Then you're stupid. Or maybe I'm just tired of letting fear make my decisions." They stood 3 feet apart in the humid greenhouse, surrounded by living things and dead things, and things that hadn't decided which they were yet. The tension stretched between them like a wire pulled too tight. "You can't stay here," Vincent said finally. Elena's breath caught. "What?" "This was a mistake. Marco will drive you back to Manhattan this afternoon. I'll have my lawyers. No. Elena, no. She moved closer, her hands curling into fists. You don't get to offer me protection and then take it back because I made you uncomfortable. You don't get to tell me your truth and then punish me for hearing it. I'm not punishing you. Then what are you doing? Vincent's control finally cracked. I'm trying to keep you safe from me. The words echoed in the greenhouse. Elena stared at him, at the tension in his shoulders, at the way his hands had curled into fists at his sides, at the complete and total loss of the mask he usually wore. You think you're dangerous to me, she said quietly. I know I am. Because of what you do? The criminal empire? The violence? Because of what I am. And what are you? Vincent's voice dropped to barely a whisper. Someone who destroys everything he touches. Elena's throat tightened. She took a step forward, then another, until they were close enough that she could feel the heat coming off his body. You're not destroying me, she said. Not yet. Not ever. You can't know that. Neither can you. They stood inches apart, breathing the same humid air, and Elena realized they'd crossed some invisible line they couldn't uncross. Vincent's eyes dropped to her mouth, lingered there. His jaw tightened like he was fighting himself. This is a bad idea, he said. Probably. You should leave. I know. But neither of them moved. Then Vincent's phone rang, shattering the moment. He pulled it from his pocket, glanced at the screen, and his entire expression changed. All the vulnerability vanished. All the emotion locked away. I need to take this, he said. He answered the phone and walked out of the greenhouse, leaving Elena standing alone among the plants, her heart hammering, her skin flushed, trying to figure out what the hell had just happened. Vincent didn't return to the house for the rest of the day. Elena ate lunch alone, explored the estate, found the library and lost herself in books she couldn't focus on, watched the rain through massive windows and tried not to think about the look in Vincent's eyes right before his phone rang. Dinner came and went. Still no Vincent. Sophia brought a tray to Elena's room at 8 p.m. Mr. Moretti sends his apologies. He's handling business in the city. He'll return late. Is everything okay? Sophia's expression remained neutral. Everything is always okay with Mr. Moretti? Until it isn't. The cryptic answer left Elena more unsettled than before. She tried to sleep, failed, ended up back in the library at midnight, curled up in an armchair with a book she wasn't reading, listening to the old house settle around her. That's where Vincent found her at 2 a.m. She heard his footsteps in the corridor first. Then he appeared in the library doorway, still wearing his coat, his hair damp from rain. He looked exhausted. You're awake, he said. So are you. Vincent moved into the library, shrugging off his coat. Grant Mercer filed for a preliminary injunction this afternoon, trying to freeze your bank accounts pending the restraining order hearing. Elena's book slipped from her hands. He can't do that. He can. And he did. My lawyers are fighting it, but it'll take time. How much time? A week, maybe 2. Elena's hands started shaking. That's all the money I have. If he freezes my accounts, you'll stay here, Vincent interrupted. You won't need money. I can't just live off you. Why not? Because that makes me... Elena stopped, the words catching in her throat. Makes you what? Vincent moved closer. Dependent? Trapped? In my debt? All of those things. You're already all of those things. The accounts are just paperwork. The bluntness of it hit Elena like a slap. You're saying I have no choice. I'm saying you have the same choices you've always had. Stay and let me help you, or leave and fight this alone. Those aren't choices. Those are different versions of the same cage. Vincent's jaw tightened. You think this is a cage? What would you call it? Protection? Protection looks a lot like control from where I'm standing. They stared at each other across the library, the tension crackling between them like electricity before a storm. Then Vincent said quietly, You want to leave? Leave. Marco will drive you back tonight, but don't call me in 3 days when Grant's lawyers have emptied your bank accounts and you're evicted from your apartment. Don't come looking for help when you finally understand that I'm the only person standing between you and complete destruction. Elena's breath came faster. You're trying to scare me again. I'm trying to make you see reality. Reality is that you want me to need you. The accusation hung in the air. Vincent's expression went very cold. You don't know what I want. Then tell me. Why? So you can use it against me? Because I'm tired of guessing. Fine. You want the truth? Vincent stepped closer, his voice dropping. I want you safe. I want Grant Mercer destroyed, and I want to stop thinking about you every goddamn minute of every goddamn day. But I can't have all three, so I'm choosing the first two. The confession hit Elena like a physical blow. Before she could respond, Vincent turned and walked out of the library, his footsteps echoing down the corridor until they faded entirely. Elena sank back into the armchair, her hands shaking, her heart hammering, and finally understood the truth. Vincent Moretti wasn't trying to control her. He was trying to survive her, and she was doing the exact same thing to him. Eat. 3 days passed. Grant's injunction went through. Elena's accounts were frozen. Her landlord called about late rent. Her phone started receiving calls from debt collectors about credit cards she'd relied on while her income dried up. Everything was falling apart exactly as Vincent predicted. Elena spent the days at the estate, learning the rhythms of Vincent's world. Sophia's quiet efficiency, Marco's constant presence, the other security personnel who appeared and disappeared like ghosts. The phone calls Vincent took in his study with the door closed. The meetings that happened in the library with men in expensive suits who looked at Elena like she was a problem they hadn't solved yet. She felt like a ghost herself, haunting the edges of Vincent's life without belonging to it. They barely spoke. Vincent kept his distance, ate meals in his study, left before Elena woke and returned after she slept. The only proof he still existed was the coffee that appeared on her breakfast tray each morning, made exactly the way she liked it. On the fourth morning, Elena found Sophia in the kitchen. He's avoiding me, Elena said. Sophia didn't look up from the dough she was kneading. Mr. Moretti avoids everything that scares him. I don't scare him. Then you're not paying attention. Elena sat at the counter, watching Sophia work. How long have you worked for him? 15 years. You must know him well. I know what he lets me know. And what's that? Sophia paused, her hands still in the dough. That he's a man who believes love gets people killed. So he spent his entire life making sure he never loves anything. That's a terrible way to live. It's kept him alive. There's more to life than just staying alive. Sophia's eyes met Elena's. You say that like someone who's never had to fight for survival. Elena flinched. Vincent had said almost the exact same thing. How did his mother die? Elena asked quietly. Sophia's expression closed. That's not my story to tell. He told me his father killed her. Then you know more than most people. But not everything. Sophia returned to her kneading. Mr. Moretti doesn't give away everything. He never has. Even to the people closest to him. You'll learn that eventually. Or maybe he just needs someone who won't run away when things get difficult. Maybe. Or maybe he needs someone smart enough to run while they still can. The warning hung in the air. Elena left the kitchen, Sophia's words echoing in her mind, and went looking for Vincent. She found him in his study, on the phone, pacing behind his desk. He looked up as she entered, his expression hardening. He covered the phone. I'm busy. I need to talk to you. Later. Now. Vincent's jaw tightened. He said something sharp into the phone and ended the call. What? Elena closed the study door behind her. We can't keep avoiding each other. I'm not avoiding you. Yes, you are. You haven't said more than 10 words to me in 3 days. I've been working. You've been hiding. Vincent's hands curled into fists on the desk. I don't hide. Then what do you call this? Self-preservation. From what? From you. The words exploded out of him like they'd been trapped too long. Elena stopped, stared at him. What are you talking about? Vincent moved around the desk, his control finally shattering. You don't belong in this world, Elena. You don't belong in this house. You don't belong anywhere near me. Every day you stay here, you get pulled deeper into something you won't survive. That's not your decision to make. Yes, it is. Because when this goes wrong, When you realize what I am and what I'm capable of, you'll leave. And I need you to leave now before I... He stopped himself. Before you what? Vincent's voice dropped to barely a whisper. Before I can't let you. The confession hung between them. Elena's breath caught. Vincent, go back to Manhattan, he said. I'll keep fighting Grant. I'll protect you from a distance, but you can't stay here. Not anymore. Why? Because I'm starting to care whether you stay or leave, and that's dangerous for both of us. Elena moved closer. What if I don't want to leave? Then you're making a mistake. Let me make it. Elena, stop trying to protect me from you. I'm not your mother. I'm not some fragile thing that breaks under pressure. I'm here because I chose to be here. And I'm staying because I choose that too. Vincent's control finally broke completely. He closed the distance between them in 2 strides, his hands framing her face, his eyes searching hers like he was looking for something he'd lost a long time ago. You're going to destroy me, he whispered, or save you. Same thing. Then he kissed her, hard, desperate, like a man drowning who'd finally found air. Elena's hands fisted in his shirt, pulling him closer, kissing him back with all the fear and anger and need that had been building between them for days. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Vincent pressed his forehead against hers. This doesn't change anything, he said. It changes everything. Elena, you can't take it back now. Vincent's hands tightened in her hair. I'm going to hurt you. Maybe not today. Maybe not tomorrow. But eventually, that's what I do. I destroy everything I touch. Elena pulled back just far enough to meet his eyes. Then I guess I'll have to be the first thing you don't destroy. Vincent's expression cracked. For just a moment, she saw the boy who'd watched his mother die, the teenager who'd killed his father, the man who'd built an empire on blood and violence because it was the only way he knew how to survive. You don't know what you're asking for, he whispered. Neither do you. Then she kissed him again, and this time Vincent stopped fighting. They didn't talk about what happened, didn't define it, didn't analyze it, just existed in the space they'd created together and tried to pretend it wasn't going to explode eventually. Vincent stopped avoiding her. They ate meals together, talked in the greenhouse while he worked on the roses, sat in the library at night reading in comfortable silence. Sophia noticed but said nothing. Marco noticed but remained professionally neutral. Elena learned the rhythms of Vincent's world more intimately, learned which phone calls meant someone was about to die, which meetings meant money was changing hands, which silences meant Vincent was planning something terrible. She should have been terrified. Instead, she felt safer than she had in years. Grant's lawyers kept pushing. The restraining order hearing was set for 3 weeks out. Vincent's lawyers filed counter-motions. The preliminary injunction remained in place, freezing Elena's accounts. Her landlord started eviction proceedings. Elena watched her old life dissolve from a distance, and the strangest part was that she didn't miss it. A week after they first kissed, Elena found Vincent in the greenhouse late at night. He was working on the dying seedling she'd noticed weeks ago, transplanting it into fresh soil with hands that should have been too violent for something so delicate. I thought you said it was already dead, Elena said from the doorway. Vincent didn't look up. I changed my mind. She moved into the greenhouse, watching him work. What made you change your mind? Someone convinced me that giving up on things was easier than admitting I'd failed. Elena's throat tightened. That someone sounds smart. She's reckless. But yes, also smart. He finished transplanting the seedling, wiped his hands on a cloth, turned to face her fully. Grant knows you're here, he said. Elena's breath caught. How? Someone in my organization told him. I don't know who yet, but Grant's lawyers filed a motion this morning claiming you're being held against your will by a known criminal. That's insane. It doesn't matter if it's true. It matters what the judge believes. Vincent's jaw tightened. The hearing is in 2 days. You'll have to testify. Grant's lawyers will try to make you look unstable, try to paint me as someone who coerced you into staying here. I'll tell them the truth. The truth is that you're living in my house, wearing clothes I bought, protected by my security. The optics are terrible. Elena moved closer. Then what do? We fight. Vincent's eyes met hers. But you need to understand something. This hearing is going to be brutal. Grant's lawyers will drag your name through the mud. They'll bring up every mistake you've ever made, every bad decision, every moment of weakness, and I can't protect you from that, not in a courtroom. I don't need you to protect me from the truth. Elena, I'm not running. I'm not hiding. If Grant wants a fight, he'll get one. Vincent's expression softened. You're either the bravest person I've ever met or the most foolish. Can I be both? Despite everything, Vincent almost smiled. Yes, you can definitely be both. He pulled her close, his arms wrapping around her, and for just a moment they stood together in the humid greenhouse, surrounded by living things and the weight of everything coming for them. Whatever happens at that hearing, Vincent said quietly against her hair, you have to promise me something. What? That if it goes wrong, if the judge rules against us, you'll let me get you out of the country, new identity, new life, somewhere Grant can't reach you. Elena pulled back to look at him. You're talking about me disappearing. I'm talking about you surviving. And what about you? I'll handle Grant my own way. Vincent, promise me. Elena's throat closed. She saw the desperation in his eyes, the fear he'd never admit to feeling, the absolute certainty that he'd burn down the entire world before he'd let Grant Mercer hurt her again. I promise, she whispered. It was a lie. They both knew it. But Vincent held her anyway, and Elena let him, and neither of them mentioned the fact that they'd just crossed a line they couldn't uncross. Outside the greenhouse, rain began to fall. Inside, Vincent Moretti held the first person he'd cared about in 15 years and tried to figure out how to keep her alive. While Elena Vale stood in the arms of the most dangerous man in Manhattan and realized she'd finally stopped running, not because she felt safe, but because there was nowhere left to run except deeper into the fire. The courtroom smelled like old wood and fear. Elena sat at the defendant's table beside Vincent's lawyer, a sharp-faced woman named Catherine Wu, who'd spent the last 2 days drilling her on testimony. Vincent sat 3 rows back, his presence filling the space even though he hadn't said a word since they'd arrived. Grant Mercer sat across the aisle with his legal team, 3 lawyers in suits that cost more than most people's cars. Grant looked thinner than Elena remembered, harder around the eyes, like something inside him had calcified into pure malice. He stared at her the entire time they waited for the judge. Elena forced herself not to look away. The bailiff called the courtroom to order. Judge Patricia Morrison entered, mid-60s, gray hair, eyes that had seen every variation of human ugliness and stopped being surprised by any of it. We're here for preliminary motions in Mercer versus Vale, Judge Morrison said, settling behind the bench. Restraining order petition with complicating circumstances. Mr. Chen, you're representing the petitioner? Grant's lead attorney stood. Yes, Your Honor. David Chen for Grant Mercer. Ms. Wu for the respondent? Catherine rose. Yes, Your Honor. Catherine Wu representing Elena Vale. Then let's begin. What followed was 3 hours of legal warfare. Grant's lawyers painted Elena as unstable, showed photos from the gala where she looked drunk and hysterical, brought up her professional failures over the past month, implied she'd manufactured the abuse claims to justify her own erratic behavior. Then they brought up Vincent. David Chen stood, holding a folder like it contained proof of original sin. Your Honor, we'd like to submit evidence regarding Miss Vale's current living situation. Proceed. Chen opened the folder, produced photographs. These were taken over the past 2 weeks. They show Miss Vale residing at the estate of Vincent Moretti, a man with documented ties to organized crime, suspected involvement in racketeering, and currently under federal investigation for money laundering. The courtroom went very still. Elena felt Vincent's presence behind her like a physical thing. Judge Morrison studied the photographs. Miss Vale is living with Mr. Moretti? Catherine Wu stood. Miss Vale accepted Mr. Moretti's protection after my client froze her bank accounts and made it financially impossible for her to maintain her own residence. Protection? Chen interrupted. Your Honor, Vincent Moretti doesn't provide protection. He provides coercion. Miss Vale isn't a guest. She's a prisoner. Elena's hands curled into fists under the table. That's absurd, Catherine said sharply. Miss Vale is free to leave at any time. Then why hasn't she? Chen moved to the evidence table, produced more documents. Bank records show Miss Vale's accounts were frozen per standard legal procedure pending this hearing. Yet she made no attempt to secure alternate housing, made no attempt to contact friends or family. Instead, within hours of the injunction, she was relocated to Mr. Moretti's estate. That's not protection, that's isolation. Judge Morrison looked at Elena. Miss Vale, are you being held against your will? Elena stood, her legs shaking. No, Your Honor. Are you free to leave Mr. Moretti's residence? Yes. Then why haven't you? The question hung in the air. Elena's mouth went dry, because the truth was complicated, because safety felt like captivity until you didn't have it anymore, because Vincent had become the only solid thing in a world that had fallen apart. Because I have nowhere else to go, Elena said quietly. The admission echoed through the courtroom. Judge Morrison's expression remained neutral. Miss Wu, your client is an educated woman with a professional career. Are you telling me she has no friends, no colleagues, no resources beyond accepting residence from a suspected criminal? Catherine's jaw tightened. My client's professional reputation was systematically destroyed by Mr. Mercer's associates. Her colleagues abandoned her. Her friends stopped returning calls. Mr. Moretti was the only person willing to help when everyone else looked away. Help? Chen's voice dripped with disdain. Your Honor, Vincent Moretti doesn't help people. He owns them. And right now, he owns Miss Vale. Objection, Catherine snapped. Sustained, Judge Morrison said. Mr. Chen, watch your language. But I'm concerned about the optics here. Miss Wu, your client is seeking protection from one potentially abusive situation by placing herself in another. That's not a solution. That's trading problems. Elena's breath came faster. It's not the same thing. Miss Vale, Judge Morrison interrupted. I understand you feel vulnerable, but the court cannot ignore the fact that you're currently living with a man whose business empire is built on violence and intimidation. That raises serious questions about your judgment and your ability to make clear decisions about your own safety. Vincent has never hurt me. That you know of. The words hit like a slap. Behind her, Elena heard Vincent shift in his seat, felt the tension radiating off him. Your Honor, Catherine said carefully, Mr. Moretti is not on trial here. No, but his involvement complicates everything. Judge Morrison looked at Elena directly. Miss Vale, I'm going to ask you something, and I need you to be very honest. Do you believe Vincent Moretti's protection comes without conditions? Elena's throat closed. The question was a trap. Answer yes, and she looked naive. Answer no, and she admitted Vincent expected something in return. I believe he's keeping me safe, Elena said finally. That's not an answer. It's the only one I have. Judge Morrison's eyes narrowed. Then let me be very clear. This court will not facilitate a situation where a vulnerable woman escapes one controlling relationship only to enter another. Miss Vale, you have until Monday to secure independent housing. If you cannot do so, this court will arrange temporary placement in a domestic violence shelter where you can receive appropriate support. Elena's vision blurred. You're punishing me for accepting help. I'm protecting you from making decisions based on fear rather than reason. Your Honor, Catherine began. This hearing is continued until Monday at 9 a.m., Judge Morrison said, her gavel coming down hard. Miss Vale will appear at that time with evidence of independent living arrangements. Until then, the preliminary injunction remains in place. We're adjourned. The courtroom erupted. Grant's lawyers looked triumphant. Catherine looked furious. Elena just stood there, her hands shaking, trying to process what had just happened. Behind her, Vincent's voice cut through the noise. We're leaving, now. That's it. They didn't speak in the car. Marco drove. Vincent sat beside Elena in the back seat, his jaw so tight she could see the muscle jumping. His hands were fists on his thighs. He stared out the window at the city passing by and said nothing. Elena's mind raced. Independent housing, by Monday. With what money? With what references? With what credit history after Grant had destroyed her professionally? The judge had just made an impossible demand and called it protection. I'll find something, Elena said quietly. Vincent didn't respond. I'll figure it out. Maybe one of my old colleagues. They won't help you. You don't know that. Yes, I do. Vincent's voice was flat, dead. Grant's already contacted anyone who might take you in. Told them helping you means making an enemy of his family. No one will risk it. Elena's hands twisted in her lap. Then what do I do? You go to the shelter. What? Vincent finally looked at her. His eyes were cold, remote, like he'd locked everything human away. The judge gave you an out. Take it. I'm not going to a shelter. Why not? You'd be safe, have resources, support services, everything you actually need instead of staying with someone who's only making your situation worse. Elena stared at him. You think you're making things worse? I know I am. That's not true. Elena. Vincent's voice dropped lower. Every person in that courtroom saw exactly what I am, a criminal, someone who uses violence and intimidation to get what he wants, and now you're associated with me. That association will follow you forever. I don't care. You should. Why are you doing this? Doing what? Pushing me away. Vincent's jaw tightened. I'm being realistic. No, you're being a coward. The word hung in the car like a gunshot. Marco's eyes flicked to the rearview mirror. Vincent's expression went very still. What did you say? You heard me? Elena's voice shook with anger. You're using this hearing as an excuse to push me out because that's easier than admitting you care what happens to me. I've done nothing but care what happens to you. Then stop trying to send me away. I'm trying to protect you. From what? Grant? The judge? Or from yourself? Vincent's control snapped. From me! From what I am! From what associating with me will do to whatever's left of your life. The confession exploded out of him. Elena's breath caught. Vincent turned away, his hands curling tighter. The judge was right. You traded one controlling relationship for another. I'm no better than Grant. I just use different methods. That's not true, oh, isn't it? You live in my house, wear clothes I bought, go nowhere without my security. I've isolated you just as effectively as Grant did. I just made it feel like protection instead of control. It's not the same. Tell me how it's different. Because you're not hurting me. Not yet. Vincent's voice dropped to a whisper. But I will. Eventually. That's what I do. The car pulled through the estate gates. Elena grabbed Vincent's arm. Listen to me. You are not your father. You are not Grant. You are not every man who ever hurt someone they claim to protect. You're Vincent. And Vincent has kept me safer than I've been in years. Vincent pulled away from her touch. Safety isn't enough. Then what is? Freedom, choice, a life that isn't dependent on me. And if I choose this life, then you're making a mistake. The car stopped. Marco opened the door. Vincent climbed out without looking back. Elena sat alone in the car, her hands shaking, her eyes burning, and finally understood what Sophia had warned her about. Vincent Moretti didn't destroy things intentionally. He destroyed them by loving them so badly, he convinced himself they'd be better off without him. Elena found him in the greenhouse 2 hours later. He was working on the roses again, his movements mechanical, his shoulders rigid with tension. He didn't acknowledge her presence, even though he definitely heard her enter. Vincent, go inside. No. Elena, I'm not going to the shelter. I'm not leaving this house. And I'm not letting you push me away because a judge made you feel like a monster. Vincent's hand stilled on the pruning shears. You should be afraid of me. I'm not. Then you're an idiot. Probably. Elena moved closer. But I'm your idiot, so you're stuck with me. This isn't a joke. I know it's not. But you pushing me away isn't going to change what happened in that courtroom. It's not going to make Grant go away. And it's sure as hell not going to make me safer. Vincent finally turned to face her. His eyes were haunted. The judge was right. I've isolated you, made you dependent on me. That's exactly what abusers do. Abusers don't give their victims choices. You've given me nothing but choices since the moment we met. Choices between bad options aren't real choices. They're the only kind that matter. They stood 3 feet apart in the humid greenhouse, and Elena saw the war happening behind Vincent's eyes. The part of him that wanted to keep her safe fighting the part that believed keeping her safe meant letting her go. Tell me what you're afraid of, Elena said quietly. I'm not afraid. Don't lie to me. Not now. Vincent's jaw worked. I'm afraid I'll turn into my father. That one day you'll look at me and see the same man who put my mother in the hospital, who made her feel like she couldn't leave because leaving would be worse than staying. That will never happen. You can't know that. Yes, I can. Because your father didn't spend every day trying to make sure he wasn't his father. Your father didn't question every decision, every action, every word. Your father didn't hate himself for having power over people. You do. That's the difference. Vincent's hands curled into fists. Hating myself doesn't make me safe. No, but it makes you aware. And awareness is the first step toward change. I don't want to change. I want you safe. Then stop trying to send me away. Elena? I mean it. We find another solution. We fight Grant together. We figure this out. But I'm not leaving. Not unless you physically throw me out. Vincent's eyes searched hers. You're serious. Completely. You're willing to bet your entire future on me not destroying you. Yes. That's insane. Maybe, but it's my choice to make. They stood in silence, breathing the same humid air, and Elena saw the moment Vincent stopped fighting. His shoulders dropped, his hands uncurled. The rigid tension bled out of him like water from a cracked vessel. Okay, he said quietly. Okay? Okay, you win. You can stay. Elena's throat tightened. That's not winning. That's just us both choosing not to be idiots. Despite everything, Vincent's mouth twitched, almost a smile. Speak for yourself. Elena closed the distance between them, wrapped her arms around his waist, pressed her face against his chest, and felt his heartbeat hammering beneath the expensive fabric. Vincent's arms came around her slowly, carefully, like he was afraid she might break. I don't know how to do this, he whispered against her hair. Do what? Care about someone without destroying them. Then we'll figure it out together. They stood holding each other in the greenhouse while rain began to fall outside, and for just a moment, Elena let herself believe they might actually survive this. She was wrong. The call came at 3 a.m. Elena woke to shouting in the corridor. Men's voices. Urgent, sharp. Then Vincent's door slamming open. She grabbed the robe from the chair and ran into the hallway. Vincent stood outside his bedroom, shirtless, phone pressed to his ear, his face a mask of cold rage. Marco stood beside him with 2 other security personnel, all of them armed. What happened? Elena asked. Vincent held up one hand, listened to whoever was on the phone. Then he said something in Italian, fast, vicious, the kind of tone that made Elena's stomach drop. He ended the call, looked at Marco. Get everyone up. Full security sweep of the property. No one in or out until I say otherwise. Already happening, Marco said. Vincent's eyes finally landed on Elena. The look on his face made her blood run cold. Get dressed, he said. We need to talk. Protect. 10 minutes later, Elena sat in Vincent's study while he paced behind his desk like a caged animal. Marco stood by the door. Sophia had appeared from somewhere, her face grave. 2 more security personnel flanked the windows. Someone leaked your location to Grant, Vincent said without preamble. Grant's lawyers filed an emergency motion an hour ago claiming you're being held in an armed compound against your will. They're requesting immediate police intervention. Elena's breath caught. That's insane. It doesn't matter if it's true. Police are already on their way. They'll be here within the hour with a warrant to search the property and verify your safety. Then I'll tell them I'm fine. It's not that simple. Vincent stopped pacing, turned to face her. Grant's lawyers are also claiming I've been threatening witnesses, intimidating people connected to the case, using my criminal connections to manipulate the legal system in your favor. Have you? The question hung in the air. Vincent's jaw tightened. Yes. Elena's stomach dropped. I've had my people reach out to Grant's business associates, Vincent continued, his voice flat. Suggested that continuing to support him would be bad for their health and their portfolios. I've had journalists digging into his family's finances. I've had lawyers file motions designed to drain his legal resources. Everything I've done has been to protect you, but it's also everything Grant needed to paint me as exactly what I am. A criminal. Yes. Elena stood, her legs shaking. Why didn't you tell me? Because I didn't want you to know how far I was willing to go. Vincent, don't. His voice was sharp. Don't look at me like I betrayed you. I've been protecting you the only way I know how, with money and threats and violence. That's who I am. That's what I do. And now it's going to destroy both of us. The words hit Elena like a physical blow. When the police arrive, Vincent continued, they're going to search this property. They're going to find weapons. They're going to find documents connecting me to operations that aren't technically legal. They're going to find evidence that I'm exactly what Grant claims I am. Then we hide it. There's no time. And even if there was, running would only make me look guilty. Elena's mind raced. Then what do we do? Vincent's eyes met hers. You tell the police I coerced you. Tell them I forced you to stay here. Tell them everything Grant's lawyers claimed is true. Elena stared at him. What? It's the only way to protect you. I'm not doing that. Elena, listen to me. No, you listen to me. Elena moved around the desk. I'm not going to destroy you to save myself. That's not how this works. That's exactly how this works. You tell the police I threatened you. You corroborate Grant's story. The judge grants the restraining order against Grant, and probably one against me too. You go to the shelter. You rebuild your life. And I handle the legal consequences. The legal consequences will put you in prison. Maybe. Maybe not. I have good lawyers. Vincent, this is the only way you survive this. What about you? I've survived worse. Elena grabbed his face, forcing him to look at her. I'm not letting you fall on your sword for me. We fight this together or not at all. There is no together anymore. Don't you understand? Grant won. He proved exactly what I was afraid of, that being with me would destroy you. The judge was right. Your life is worse because of me. That's not true. Yes, it is. And when the police get here, you're going to tell them the truth about what I am, about what I've done, about how I've used my criminal connections to manipulate your case. And then you're going to walk away from me. I won't. You will. Because if you don't, you'll go down with me, and I won't let that happen. Elena's eyes burned. You don't get to make that choice. I already did. The finality in his voice was like a door slamming shut. Behind them, Marco's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, looked at Vincent. Police are at the gates. Vincent's expression went cold, remote, the mask sliding back into place. Let them in. Vincent, no. Elena grabbed his arm. He pulled away gently. Sophia will take you to the library. You'll tell the police whatever they want to hear, and then you'll leave with them. I'm not leaving you. Yes, you are. Vincent's voice was flat, final. Because staying with me will destroy you, and I've destroyed enough already. He walked out of the study without looking back. Elena tried to follow, but Sophia caught her arm. Let him go, Kara. I can't. You have to. He's going to sacrifice himself. He's going to do what he's always done, protect the people he loves by pushing them away. Elena's throat closed. I won't let him. You don't have a choice. The police are here, and Vincent has already made his decision. Outside, Elena heard car doors slamming, voices, the crackle of police radios. The world was closing in, and Vincent Moretti was walking straight into the fire to make sure she didn't burn. Keep. The police interview lasted 2 hours. 3 officers, 1 detective, all of them asking the same questions in different ways. Was she being held against her will? Had Vincent threatened her? Did she feel safe leaving with them? Elena answered truthfully. No. No, she felt safe staying, but the truth didn't matter. The detective, a tired-looking woman named Rodriguez, finally closed her notebook. Miss Vale, I'm going to be straight with you. Vincent Moretti is not a good man. He's under federal investigation for racketeering, money laundering, and conspiracy. Being associated with him will destroy whatever life you're trying to rebuild. He's kept me safe. He's isolated you. There's a difference. That's not true. Then answer me this. If you're free to leave, why haven't you? Why haven't you contacted friends, family, colleagues? Why has your entire world shrunk down to this estate and the people Vincent Moretti employs? Elena's hands twisted in her lap. Because everyone else abandoned me. Or because Vincent made sure you had nowhere else to go. The accusation hit like a slap. Detective Rodriguez leaned forward. I've seen this pattern before. Rich, powerful men who present themselves as saviors, who offer protection that slowly becomes control, who make vulnerable women believe they have no other options. Vincent Moretti might not be hitting you, but he's still trapping you. You're wrong. Am I? Then walk out that door right now. Come with us. Prove you're free to leave. Elena stared at her. And go where? The shelter, like the judge ordered. I don't need a shelter. Then where will you go? Back to your apartment that you can't afford? To friends who won't return your calls? To a career that's been destroyed? Rodriguez's voice softened. Miss Vale, I know this is hard, but Vincent Moretti isn't your solution. He's just a different problem. Elena's vision blurred. Because the terrible thing was that Rodriguez wasn't entirely wrong. Elena had nowhere to go. No resources beyond Vincent. No support system beyond the people he employed. She'd let herself become so dependent on him that leaving felt impossible, even though staying felt like slow suffocation. I need to talk to him, Elena whispered. That's not a good idea. Please, just 5 minutes. Rodriguez exchanged glances with the other officers. Fine, 5 minutes, supervised. They brought Vincent to the library. He looked exhausted, hollowed out, like something vital had been carved away. 2 officers flanked him. He sat across from Elena with the length of an antique coffee table between them and a chasm neither could cross. Are you okay? Elena asked. I'm fine. Vincent, they're taking me in for questioning. Federal charges. I'll be released by morning, but it's going to get ugly. Elena's throat tightened. This is because of me. No, it's because of what I am. You're just the excuse Grant needed to force the issue. I'll tell them the truth. The truth is that I'm a criminal who used illegal methods to fight your ex-boyfriend. The truth doesn't help either of us. Then what do I do? Vincent's eyes met hers. You leave. You go with the police. You check into the shelter. You let the court handle Grant properly, and you forget about me. I can't. Yes, you can, and you will. His voice was flat, empty. Whatever we had here, it's over. We both knew it couldn't last. The words hit Elena like bullets. You don't mean that, she whispered. I do. Vincent, time's up, Detective Rodriguez said from the doorway. Mr. Moretti, you need to come with us. Vincent stood, didn't look at Elena again, just walked toward the door with 2 officers flanking him like they expected him to run. Elena surged to her feet. Vincent, wait. He paused at the doorway, still didn't turn around. Goodbye, Elena. Then he was gone. Elena stood in the library, shaking, her world collapsing around her, and finally understood the cruelest truth of all. Vincent Moretti had saved her from Grant, and now he was saving her from himself by destroying everything they'd built together. The shelter was exactly what Elena expected. Clean, institutional, filled with women who'd survived things Elena was only beginning to understand. Social workers who meant well but had seen too much trauma to believe in happy endings anymore. Elena was given a room, a bed, access to support services, everything she supposedly needed except the one thing she actually wanted. Vincent. 3 days passed. The restraining order hearing was rescheduled. Grant's lawyers were celebrating their victory. Vincent's federal questioning had led to formal charges, racketeering, witness intimidation, conspiracy. His lawyers were fighting it, but the damage was done. Vincent Moretti's empire was crumbling, and Elena was watching it happen from a shelter bed while well-meaning counselors told her she'd made the right choice. On the 4th day, Sophia appeared. Elena was in the common room when the social worker came to get her. You have a visitor. Sophia sat in the small meeting room looking exactly the same as always, severe, composed, unreadable. Elena sat across from her. How is he? Surviving. Is he out? Bail was posted. He's under house arrest pending trial. Elena's hands twisted in her lap. I need to see him. No. Sophia, he doesn't want to see you. The words were delivered without inflection, without cruelty, just cold fact. Elena's throat closed. I don't believe you. Believe what you want, but Mr. Moretti asked me to bring you this. Sophia slid an envelope across the table. He wanted you to understand why he did what he did. Elena stared at the envelope. What is it? The truth, the parts he never told you. Sophia stood. I'm sorry, Kara, but some men are too broken to fix, and Mr. Moretti stopped believing he deserved fixing a long time ago. She left. Elena sat alone in the meeting room, the envelope in her hands, and finally opened it. Inside was a single photograph. A woman. Dark hair. Soft eyes. Standing in front of a greenhouse filled with roses. Vincent's mother. And on the back, in Vincent's handwriting, her name was Maria. She loved gardens. She believed broken things could be fixed. She was wrong. I'm my father's son, and you deserve better than what I can give you. Elena stared at the photograph, tears streaming down her face, and finally understood what Vincent had been trying to tell her all along. He wasn't pushing her away because he didn't care. He was pushing her away because he cared too much. And he believed caring about him would kill her the same way caring about his father had killed his mother. Outside the shelter, rain began to fall. Inside, Elena Vale sat in a meeting room, holding a photograph of a dead woman, and made the choice that would change everything. She wasn't going to let Vincent Moretti destroy himself to save her, even if it meant destroying herself to save him first. Elena left the shelter at dawn, not through the front door where social workers could stop her, through the service entrance where deliveries came in and security cameras had blind spots. She'd learned the patterns over 4 days of watching, learned which staff member smoked cigarettes at 6 a.m., learned which door stayed unlocked for exactly 7 minutes during shift change. She walked out into the gray morning wearing donated clothes and carrying nothing but the photograph of Vincent's mother and a determination so fierce it felt like swallowing glass. The city was just waking up. Street cleaners, early commuters, people who existed in the spaces between night and day. Elena kept her head down and walked 12 blocks before she found a bodega with a payphone that still worked. She dialed the number she'd memorized from Vincent's business card. Marco answered on the second ring. Who is this? It's Elena. Silence. Then, you shouldn't be calling this number. I need to see him. That's not possible. Marco, please. Miss Vale, Mr. Moretti was very clear. You're not to contact him. You're not to come to the estate. You're to move on with your life. Is that what he said? Move on. That's what he meant. That's what he... Elena's hand tightened on the phone. Then tell him I'm not very good at following orders. Tell him I'm coming to see him whether he likes it or not. And tell him if he tries to stop me, I'll camp outside his gates until the federal agents get bored of watching me. Miss Vale? I mean it, Marco. I walked away once because he asked me to. I'm not doing it again. She hung up before Marco could respond. 40 minutes later, a black SUV pulled up to the curb. The window rolled down. Marco sat in the driver's seat looking resigned. Get in, he said, before I change my mind. Bati check. The estate looked different in daylight, less imposing, more exposed. Elena could see the security cameras mounted on every corner, the sensors hidden in the landscaping, the armed men stationed at intervals along the perimeter. Vincent's world made visible in ways it hadn't been before. The SUV stopped at the main entrance. Marco turned to face her. He's going to be angry. I know. He told me to keep you away. I know that too. Then why are you doing this? Elena met his eyes. Because someone has to stop him from destroying himself. And apparently, I'm the only one stupid enough to try. Marco's expression softened slightly. You're not stupid, Miss Vale. You're just in love with the wrong man. There's no such thing as the wrong man, just the wrong timing. That's optimistic. That's all I have left. Marco sighed, climbed out, opened her door. He's in the greenhouse. But don't say I didn't warn you. Botex. Vincent stood exactly where Elena had seen him last, working on the roses, hands dirty, shoulders rigid, like he could prune away the last 4 days if he just focused hard enough on something he could control. Elena stopped in the doorway. You look like hell. Vincent's hand stilled on the pruning shears. You're supposed to be at the shelter. I left. Obviously. He didn't turn around. Marco shouldn't have brought you here. Marco had no choice. I was coming with or without him. That was stupid. Probably. But I'm good at stupid decisions lately. Vincent finally turned to face her. He looked worse than Elena had imagined. dark circles under his eyes, a hollowness to his cheeks, like he hadn't eaten or slept since the police took him away. You need to leave. No. Elena, I'm not leaving. I'm not going back to the shelter. I'm not pretending this never happened. And I'm sure as hell not letting you sacrifice yourself because you think that's what noble men do. Vincent's jaw tightened. I'm not noble. I'm practical. Keeping you away from me keeps you safe. From what? From me. From my world. From everything that's coming. What's coming? Federal trial. Probably prison. Definitely the complete destruction of everything I've built. He set down the pruning shears where Grant won, Elena. He proved exactly what I was, and now I'm paying the price. Then let me help you fight. There's nothing to fight. The evidence is real. The charges are legitimate. I did everything they're accusing me of. I threatened witnesses, intimidated Grant's associates, used my criminal connections to manipulate your case. All of it. You did it to protect me. That doesn't make it legal. It makes it worth fighting for. Vincent's control finally cracked. Why? Why are you here? Why won't you just let me go? Because I love you. The words exploded out of Elena before she could stop them. The greenhouse went silent except for the sound of rain starting to fall on the glass roof. Vincent stared at her like she'd just confessed to murder. You don't love me, he said finally. You love the idea of me, the version you created in your head where I'm some tragic figure who can be saved. I'm not that person. I know exactly who you are. No, you don't. You know the parts I let you see. The greenhouse, the coffee, the careful touches. You don't know the man who broke someone's fingers for stealing from me, who had a business partner disappeared because he became a liability, who's killed people, Elena, multiple people, and never lost a single night's sleep over it. Elena didn't flinch. I know all that. Then why are you still here? Because those things don't define you. Your choices do. And you chose to protect me when no one else would. You chose to care about whether I lived or died. You chose to push me away instead of dragging me down with you. Those choices matter. Vincent's hands curled into fists. Those choices led to federal charges and house arrest. Those choices destroyed any chance you had at a normal life. Those choices proved I'm exactly what everyone always said I was. A man who protects the people he loves. A criminal who corrupts everything he touches. Elena closed the distance between them. Then corrupt me, destroy me, do whatever you think you're going to do, but stop pushing me away because you're afraid. I'm not afraid. Yes, you are. You're terrified that if you let me stay, something will happen to me, that you'll turn into your father, that I'll end up like your mother. But I'm not her, Vincent, and you're not him. We get to write our own story. Vincent's voice dropped to barely a whisper. And what if our story ends the same way? Then at least we'll have tried. They stood inches apart, and Elena saw the war happening behind Vincent's eyes. The part that wanted to believe her fighting the part that had spent 15 years convinced he didn't deserve saving. I can't ask you to stay, Vincent said finally. You're not asking. I'm choosing. Even knowing what it costs? Especially knowing what it costs. Vincent's control shattered completely. He pulled her against him hard enough to hurt, his arms wrapping around her like she was the only thing keeping him tethered to earth. Elena felt him shaking, felt the careful mask he always wore finally crack apart. I don't know how to do this, he whispered against her hair. Neither do I. I'm going to fail you. Then we'll fail together. Vincent pulled back just enough to look at her face. His thumb traced the line of her jaw. You're either the bravest person I've ever met or completely insane. Can't I be both? Despite everything, Vincent almost smiled. Then he kissed her, desperate, fierce, like a man who'd been drowning and finally found air. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, Elena said quietly, Now tell me how we fight back. Vincent's expression hardened. We don't. The federal case is airtight. My lawyers say I'm looking at 5 to 7 years minimum. There has to be something. There isn't. Grant built the perfect trap. He used my own actions against me. Everything I did to protect you became evidence of criminal conspiracy. Elena's mind raced. Then we go after Grant. We find something on him. Something that destroys his credibility. You think I haven't tried? Grant's family has lawyers scrubbing their records clean. Everything questionable has been buried or explained away. Everyone has something to hide. Not everyone is stupid enough to leave evidence. Elena pulled away from him, started pacing. There has to be a way. Some angle we're missing. Some leverage. Elena, stop. It's over. No. She spun to face him. No, I refuse to accept that. You don't get to give up now, not after everything. I'm not giving up. I'm being realistic. Realistic is what people call surrender when they're too tired to keep fighting. Vincent's jaw tightened. What do you want me to do? The trial is in 6 weeks. The evidence against me is overwhelming. My lawyers are already negotiating a plea deal. Don't take it. The alternative is 15 years instead of 7. Then we find a way to win. There is no way to win. Elena's hands curled into fists. Then we make one. The certainty in her voice made Vincent stop. What are you talking about? He asked carefully. Elena's mind was racing, pieces falling into place, connections forming. Grant's not the only player in this. He has backers, senators, investors, people who supported him because it benefited them. What if we expose all of them? That's what I've been trying to do, Mbarsi. No. You've been trying to intimidate them, threatening them into backing off. But threats only work when people are afraid of you. Right now, you're under federal investigation. You have no power. They're not afraid anymore. Vincent's eyes narrowed. So what's your solution? We don't threaten them. We give them something they want more than protecting Grant. Like what? Elena met his eyes. Me. Right. Vincent's study felt smaller than Elena remembered. She sat across from his desk while he paced behind it like a caged animal. Marco stood by the door. Sophia had appeared with coffee no one was drinking. Absolutely not, Vincent said for the 4th time. It's the only way. It's suicide. It's strategy. It's you walking into a room full of predators and painting a target on your back. Elena leaned forward. Grant's power comes from his connections. Senators, investors, powerful families who support him because they believe he's the safe bet. But what if I become the safer bet? You're an art conservator with frozen bank accounts and no professional reputation. They're not going to choose you over Grant. Not me personally. My story. Elena's hands pressed flat against the desk. Right now, the narrative is that I'm an unstable woman being manipulated by a criminal. But what if we flip that? What if I become the sympathetic victim who survived abuse and is now fighting back against her wealthy, connected abuser? The media would eat it alive. Vincent stopped pacing. You want to go public? I want to destroy Grant's credibility the same way he destroyed mine. But instead of doing it behind closed doors, we do it in front of cameras. We make his abuse so public, so undeniable, that his backers have no choice but to abandon him. They'll tear you apart. They're already tearing me apart. At least this way, I control the narrative. Marco shifted by the door. She's not wrong. Public sympathy is powerful. If Miss Vale tells her story right, she could turn the entire case around. Vincent's jaw worked. And what happens when Grant's lawyers destroy her on the stand? When they bring up every mistake she's ever made? Every bad decision? Every moment she could have left but didn't? Then I own it, Elena said quietly. I own all of it. The mistakes, the fear, the reasons I stayed. Women will understand. They'll see themselves in my story. And Grant's powerful friends will realize that supporting him means making an enemy of every woman watching. Vincent stared at her. You're talking about making yourself a target. I'm already a target. This way, at least I'm a target who fights back. Silence filled the study. Sophia spoke for the first time. She's right, Vincent. You've been fighting this war with violence and intimidation. That's the only language you know. But Elena speaks a different language, one that might actually work. Vincent's hands curled into fists on the desk. If this goes wrong, it won't, Elena interrupted. You can't know that. Neither can you. But doing nothing guarantees you go to prison. At least this way we have a chance. Vincent's eyes met hers across the desk. She saw the war happening behind them. The instinct to protect her fighting the knowledge that maybe, just maybe, she was right. I need guarantees, Vincent said finally. Security, lawyers, a media team that knows what they're doing. If you're going public, you're doing it with every protection I can give you. Elena's throat tightened. Does that mean... It means I'm insane for agreeing to this. But yes, We try it your way. Relief flooded through Elena so intensely she almost collapsed. Thank you, she whispered. Vincent moved around the desk, pulled her to her feet, held her face between his hands. If anything happens to you, I will burn this entire city to the ground. Nothing's going to happen to me. Promise me. I promise. It was another lie. They both knew it, but Vincent kissed her anyway, and Elena let him, and neither of them mentioned the fact that they were about to start a war they might not survive. Bolsak. The press conference was scheduled for 3 days later. Vincent's media team worked around the clock preparing Elena, coaching her on how to speak, how to present, what to emphasize, what to avoid. They brought in a stylist who dressed her in clothing that looked professional but not expensive, vulnerable but not weak. Grant's lawyers tried to block it with emergency injunctions, claimed Elena was violating the terms of the ongoing case. But Vincent's lawyers fought back harder, argued Elena had a right to tell her story, that preventing her from speaking was itself a form of abuse. The judge reluctantly agreed to let the press conference proceed. The morning it was scheduled, Elena stood in Vincent's bedroom, staring at her reflection in the mirror. She looked different, harder somehow, like the last month had burned away everything soft and left only steel. Vincent appeared behind her. You don't have to do this. Yes, I do. I can still find another way. There is no other way. We both know it. Vincent's hand settled on her shoulders. I've put you in an impossible position. No. Grant put me in an impossible position. You're just giving me the tools to fight back. Tools can become weapons. Good. I'm tired of being unarmed. Vincent turned her to face him. Listen to me. The moment you walk into that press conference, everything changes. You become public, permanent. There's no taking it back. I know. Grant will retaliate. His lawyers, his family, everyone connected to him. They'll come after you with everything they have. Let them. Vincent's jaw tightened. You're not afraid? I'm terrified, but I'm more afraid of doing nothing. He pulled her against him, held her like she might disappear if he let go. I don't deserve you. Probably not, but you're stuck with me anyway. Elena felt him smile against her hair. You're the most stubborn person I've ever met. I learned from the best. They stood holding each other while morning light filled the room, and Elena tried to memorize the feeling of safety before she walked into a room full of cameras and destroyed it forever. Woman. The press conference took place in a hotel ballroom downtown. 50 reporters, 20 cameras, lights so bright Elena could barely see past the first row. Vincent's media team had set up a podium with a microphone. Elena's statement printed on cards she wasn't supposed to need. She stood backstage, her hands shaking, her heart hammering so hard she thought it might burst. Vincent appeared beside her. He couldn't be in the room. His presence would undermine everything, but he could be here, in the shadows, close enough to reach if she fell. You're going to be brilliant, he said quietly. I'm going to throw up. That's normal. How would you know? Because I've done this. Different context. Same terror. Elena looked at him. What did you do? I reminded myself that the people in that room were more afraid of what I might say than I was of saying it. Then I walked out and destroyed them. I'm not trying to destroy anyone. Yes, you are. You're trying to destroy Grant's credibility, his reputation, his power. That's exactly what this is. Elena's breath came faster. What if I fail? You won't. But what if I do? Vincent's hands framed her face. Then I'll still be here. No matter what happens in that room, no matter what Grant throws at you, I'll be here when it's over. Elena's eyes burned. Promise? I promise. The media coordinator appeared. Miss Vale, we're ready for you. Elena took a breath, nodded, started toward the stage entrance. Vincent caught her hand. Elena. She turned. I love you, he said. The words were quiet, raw, like they'd been dragged out of him against his will. Elena's throat closed. You're a terrible liar. I'm not lying. Then say it again later, when I'm not about to face 50 reporters who want to tear me apart. I'll say it as many times as you need to hear it. Elena squeezed his hand. Then she let go and walked through the curtain into the lights. The room fell silent as she approached the podium. 50 faces staring at her. Cameras recording everything. The weight of what she was about to do settling on her shoulders like lead. Elena looked down at her prepared statement, the careful words Vincent's team had crafted, the strategic phrases designed to generate sympathy without admitting weakness. Then she looked up at the cameras and set the cards aside. "My name is Elena Vale," she said, her voice shaking slightly. 4 weeks ago, I ran from my boyfriend after he put his hands on me. I thought running would keep me safe. Instead, it destroyed my career, my reputation, and nearly destroyed me. I'm here today to tell you why." And then she told them everything. Not the sanitized version Vincent's team had prepared, the real version. Grant's escalating violence, the bruises she'd hidden, the apologies she'd accepted, the moment in the elevator when she'd realized running wasn't enough because Grant would never stop chasing. She told them about Vincent, about accepting protection from a man everyone called a criminal because he was the only one willing to help when everyone else looked away. She told them about the restraining order, the frozen accounts, the systematic destruction of her professional life while Grant's powerful friends protected him. She told them about the judge who'd said Vincent was dangerous while ignoring that Grant was too. And she told them the truth no one wanted to hear, that in America, if you had enough money and enough connections, you could destroy someone's life completely and call it justice. By the time she finished, tears were streaming down her face. The room was silent. Then the questions started. 50 reporters shouting at once, cameras flashing, voices demanding details, clarification, proof. Elena answered every question, didn't hide, didn't deflect, just told the truth over and over until it felt like bleeding. 30 minutes in, someone's phone buzzed, then another, then everyone's. A reporter in the third row stood. "Miss Vale, Grant Mercer's lawyers just issued a statement calling your allegations false and defamatory. They're threatening to sue for slander." Elena's hands tightened on the podium. "Let them sue. Everything I said is true. They're also claiming you're being coached by Vincent Moretti to make these accusations as part of a criminal conspiracy." Vincent Moretti saved my life when everyone else told me to be quiet and accept what was happening to me. If that's criminal conspiracy, then maybe we need to rethink what we call criminal. The room erupted. More questions, more accusations, more reporters demanding she prove things she couldn't prove because abuse didn't leave the kind of evidence that satisfied lawyers. Elena stood at the podium, her legs shaking, her voice hoarse, and kept talking until Vincent's media coordinator finally called time. She walked off the stage into Vincent's arms. "You were perfect," he whispered against her hair. "I think I just made everything worse." "No, you just started a war. Now we have to win it." The media explosion was immediate. Elena's press conference went viral within an hour. News outlets played clips on repeat. Social media erupted with opinions. Women shared their own stories of abuse and powerful men who'd never faced consequences. Grant's family called it a publicity stunt. Vincent's lawyers called it vindication. The judge scheduled an emergency hearing. Grant's lawyers filed 3 separate motions: slander, defamation, violation of the ongoing restraining order case. They claimed Elena's press conference proved she was mentally unstable and under Vincent's influence. But something had shifted. Public opinion, which had been neutral at best, was swinging toward Elena. Women's groups rallied behind her. Domestic violence organizations issued statements of support. Reporters started digging into Grant's past, looking for patterns Elena had claimed existed. And then someone leaked the hospital records. Elena didn't know who. Vincent claimed he didn't either, though Marco's expression suggested otherwise. But suddenly, the world was seeing documentation of 3 separate hospital visits over 18 months. Bruised ribs, a fractured wrist, facial contusions that Elena had explained away as accidents, all treated while she was dating Grant Mercer. Grant's lawyers tried to spin it, claimed Elena was injury-prone, that the hospital visits proved nothing about causation. But the optics were devastating. The emergency hearing became a spectacle. Reporters lined up outside the courthouse. Protesters held signs. Security had to clear a path for Elena to enter. Vincent couldn't attend. His house arrest conditions prevented it. But Catherine Wu stood beside Elena, her expression fierce. Grant sat across the aisle looking cornered, desperate, like a man watching his carefully constructed world collapse in real time. Judge Morrison entered, called the courtroom to order, looked at the chaos she'd created and sighed. This case has become a circus, she said, and I take responsibility for contributing to that. But we're here to address the law, not public opinion. Mr. Chen, your motions claim Miss Vale violated the terms of the ongoing case by speaking publicly. What's your argument? David Chen stood. Your Honor, Miss Vale's press conference was a calculated attack on my client designed to bias potential jurors and generate public sympathy. She made allegations that have no basis in fact and are currently being investigated as defamation. Everything I said was true, Elena said, standing without permission. Judge Morrison's eyes snapped to her. Miss Vale, you'll have your turn to speak. No, Your Honor, I won't, because every time I try to speak, someone tells me to be quiet, to wait my turn, to let the lawyers handle it. Well, the lawyers haven't handled it. Grant Mercer has been abusing his power and his money to destroy me, and everyone in this courtroom knows it. Miss Vale, I'm done being quiet. I'm done letting powerful men decide what I'm allowed to say about what happened to me. So yes, I held a press conference. And yes, I told the world what Grant did. And if that makes me a villain in this courtroom, then so be it. But at least the world knows the truth now. The courtroom erupted. Judge Morrison's gavel came down hard. Order, Miss Vale, sit down or I'll hold you in contempt. Hold me in contempt. At least I'll be in a cell for telling the truth instead of hiding it. Catherine grabbed Elena's arm. Elena, stop! But Elena couldn't stop. Everything that had been building for weeks finally exploded. You want to know why I went to Vincent Moretti? Because he was the only person willing to help me when everyone else, including this court, told me to accept being destroyed. You called him dangerous. You said I was trading one abusive situation for another. But Vincent never hit me, never controlled me, never made me feel like I was worthless. He just gave me the space to fight back. And if that makes him a criminal, then maybe we need better criminals. Judge Morrison stared at her. The courtroom had gone completely silent. Are you finished? The judge asked quietly. Elena's legs shook. Yes, Your Honor. Good. Because you just proved every point Mr. Chen was trying to make. You're emotional, unstable, unable to control yourself in a professional setting. You just gave Mr. Mercer's lawyers everything they need to paint you as unreliable. Elena's stomach dropped. However, Judge Morrison continued, her voice hardening, you also just reminded me why I became a judge in the first place. To protect people, the system fails. And Miss Vale, this system has failed you spectacularly. Grant's face went white. Mr. Chen, Judge Morrison said, your client's hospital records have been leaked to the press. While I cannot speak to their authenticity, I can say that if they are genuine, they paint a very different picture than the one you've been presenting. I'm ordering a full investigation into the circumstances surrounding Miss Vale's injuries during her relationship with your client. Your Honor, those records prove nothing. They prove enough to warrant scrutiny. And until that investigation is complete, I'm dissolving the preliminary injunction freezing Miss Vale's accounts. I'm also ordering both parties to maintain distance per the existing restraining order terms. But I'm removing the requirement that Miss Vale secure independent housing. She may reside where she chooses. Elena's breath caught. Furthermore, Judge Morrison continued, I'm referring this case to the District Attorney's Office for potential criminal charges related to domestic violence. If the evidence supports Miss Vale's claims, Mr. Mercer, you'll be facing more than a civil restraining order. The courtroom exploded again. Grant's lawyers surrounded him. Catherine grabbed Elena's hand. Reporters surged toward the doors to file their stories. Judge Morrison's gavel came down one final time. This hearing is adjourned. And Miss Vale, Elena looked up. Next time you want to make a speech, wait until you're not in my courtroom. Despite everything, Judge Morrison almost smiled. Elena walked out of the courthouse into chaos. Cameras everywhere, reporters shouting questions, protesters cheering, Grant's lawyers rushing him toward a waiting car while he kept his head down like a criminal. Catherine appeared beside Elena. That was the most reckless thing I've ever seen a client do. Did it work? You just got your accounts unfrozen and potentially got Grant criminally charged. Yes, it worked. But Elena? Catherine's expression turned serious. You made yourself a target. Grant's family has serious money and serious connections. They're not going to forget this. I know. Do you? Because this isn't over. This is just the beginning of a very long, very ugly fight. Then I guess it's a good thing I'm not fighting alone. Catherine's expression softened. Vincent's lucky to have you. I'm lucky to have him. That too. Elena's phone buzzed. Text from Marco. He's waiting. Elena pushed through the crowd toward the black SUV idling at the curb, climbed inside, found Vincent sitting in the back seat looking like he'd aged 5 years in 3 hours. You were watching, Elena said. Live stream. And? Vincent pulled her against him hard enough to hurt. You're either the bravest person I've ever met or completely insane. Everyone keeps saying that because it's true. Elena pulled back to look at his face. I didn't make things worse, did I? You just declared war on one of the wealthiest families in Manhattan, in front of 50 cameras, while under investigation by a federal judge. Vincent's thumb traced her cheekbone. It was the most beautiful, terrifying thing I've ever witnessed. So we're winning? We're surviving. There's a difference. I'll take surviving. Vincent's expression darkened. Grant's not going to let this stand. He's cornered now, desperate. That makes him more dangerous than ever. What do you think he'll do? Whatever it takes to destroy you before the DA's investigation finds something he can't explain away. Elena's stomach twisted. How do we stop him? We don't. We just make sure we're ready when he comes for us. The SUV pulled away from the courthouse, carrying them back toward the estate, and Elena realized the war she'd started was about to get much worse before it got better. But she'd made her choice, and she wasn't backing down now. Not when they'd come this far, not when they were so close to winning. Even if winning meant risking everything they had left. Grant came for them 3 days later, not with lawyers, not with legal motions, with something far more desperate. Elena was in the greenhouse when Marco found her. His face was grim in a way she'd never seen before. We have a situation. What kind of situation? The kind where Grant Mercer just showed up at the front gates demanding to see you. Elena's blood went cold. How did he get past security? He didn't. He's standing outside the gates with his phone recording everything. Says he won't leave until you talk to him. Says he's going to live stream this entire conversation so the world can see you're being held prisoner. That's insane. That's desperation. Marco's jaw tightened. Mr. Moretti wants you to stay inside. Let us handle it. And let Grant control the narrative again? No. Elena set down the watering can she'd been holding. I'll talk to him. Miss Vale? Marco, if I hide, Grant wins. He gets to tell everyone I'm too afraid to face him, that Vincent's keeping me locked away. I won't give him that. Marco studied her face. Then he pulled out his phone and made a call. She wants to talk to him. I know. Yes, sir. He ended the call. Mr. Moretti says if you're doing this, you're doing it with security present and cameras recording our side too. No private conversations. Everything documented. Elena nodded. Fine. 10 minutes later, she stood at the estate gates with Marco flanking her left side and 2 other security personnel flanking her right. Vincent's tech team had set up cameras. Grant stood 15 feet away on the public road, his phone held up, already streaming. He looked terrible. Thinner. Unshaven. His suit was rumpled. His eyes had the wild edge of a man who'd lost everything and was trying to claw it back through sheer force of will. Elena, Grant said, his voice carrying across the distance. Thank you for coming out. What do you want, Grant? I want to talk. Just you and me. The way we used to. We have nothing to talk about. Yes, we do. We have everything to talk about. Grant's hand shook slightly as he held up his phone. You've been telling the world your version of our relationship. I think it's time I told mine. Elena's stomach twisted. I've told the truth. Have you? Because from where I'm standing, the truth looks a lot more complicated. Grant's voice took on a pleading tone. You're making me out to be some kind of monster. But I loved you, Elena. Everything I did was because I loved you. You hit me. I made mistakes. You broke my ribs. I was drunk, angry. I didn't mean... Grant stopped himself, took a breath. I'm not saying I was right. I'm saying I was human. I was flawed. And you're acting like I'm the only one who made mistakes in our relationship. Elena's hands curled into fists. What are you talking about? You think you're innocent in all this? You think running to Vincent Moretti the moment things got difficult doesn't say something about you? Grant's voice hardened. You didn't leave me because I hit you. You left me because you found someone richer, more powerful, someone who could give you things I couldn't. That's not true. Isn't it? You're living in a mansion, wearing designer clothes, protected by armed guards. You've traded up, Elena. Don't pretend this is about safety. It's about status. Elena felt Marco tense beside her, felt the security cameras recording every word, felt the weight of Grant's accusation settling over her like oil. I left you because you hurt me, Elena said, her voice shaking. I went to Vincent because no one else would help. If that makes me a gold digger in your eyes, then you never understood me at all. I understood you perfectly. I understood that you liked being taken care of, that you liked not having to worry about money or work or any of the things normal people worry about. I gave you that. Vincent just gave you a more expensive version. You gave me bruises and fear and a life where I couldn't breathe without wondering if you'd hurt me again. And Vincent gave you what? Freedom? Grant laughed, sharp and bitter. You're not free, Elena. You're just in a prettier cage. The accusation hit harder than Elena expected because somewhere deep down a small part of her had wondered the same thing. I'm done talking to you, Elena said. Of course you are. Because the moment someone challenges your narrative, you run away. Just like you ran away from our relationship. Just like you ran away from taking any responsibility for what happened between us. I'm not responsible for you hitting me. No, but you're responsible for pushing me to that point. The words hung in the air like poison. Elena stared at Grant, at the desperation in his eyes, at the manipulation wrapped in victimhood, and she finally understood what Vincent had been trying to tell her all along. Some people don't change. They just get better at making you think you're the problem. You're right about one thing, Elena said quietly. I did run. I ran because staying would have killed me. And if that makes me weak in your eyes, I don't care, because I'd rather be weak and alive than strong and dead. Grant's face twisted. You're going to regret this. When Vincent shows his true colors, when he hurts you the way I know he will, you're going to remember this moment and realize you made a terrible mistake. Maybe, but it'll be my mistake to make, not yours. Elena turned and walked back through the gates. Behind her, Grant shouted something else, something vicious, but Elena didn't turn around, didn't give him the satisfaction of seeing her flinch. She walked back to the house with Marco beside her and Vincent's cameras recording proof that she'd faced Grant on her own terms and walked away. It wasn't the dramatic confrontation she'd imagined. No violence, no justice, just two people who'd loved each other badly realizing there was nothing left between them except damage. But sometimes that was enough. Vincent found her in the library an hour later. Elena sat curled in the armchair by the window, staring out at the gardens, trying to process what had just happened. You did well, Vincent said quietly. I don't feel like I did well. You didn't let him manipulate you. That's winning. Elena looked at him. He said I traded you for him, that I'm just as trapped here as I was with him. Do you believe that? No, but I understand why someone watching might. Vincent moved to the window, stood beside her chair. The difference between Grant and me is that I'll open the gates right now if you want to leave. I'll give you money, resources, whatever you need to start over somewhere else. Grant would never do that. He'd chase you, destroy you, make sure you couldn't survive without him. That's the difference between protection and control. Elena reached up and took his hand. I'm not leaving. I know, but I need you to know you could. Why? Because the moment you stop believing you have a choice is the moment this becomes something else. Elena pulled him down into the chair beside her. They sat pressed together in the fading afternoon light, and for once neither of them spoke about the future or the past or the war still raging around them. They just existed, together, in the brief pocket of peace they'd carved out of chaos. The DA's investigation moved faster than anyone expected. 2 weeks after Elena's press conference, prosecutors formally charged Grant Mercer with 3 counts of domestic violence and 1 count of witness intimidation. The hospital records proved damning. So did testimonies from ER staff who remembered Elena's injuries. So did security footage from Grant's building showing Elena entering with visible bruises on multiple occasions. Grant's lawyers fought back hard, claimed the charges were politically motivated, that Elena had manipulated the system with Vincent's help, that the entire case was a conspiracy orchestrated by a known criminal. But public opinion had shifted too far. Women's groups rallied behind Elena. Domestic violence organizations held press conferences. Senators who'd once supported Grant quietly distanced themselves. His family's investment firm lost 3 major clients. Grant's perfect life crumbled piece by piece exactly the way he'd tried to destroy Elena's. The trial was set for 2 months out. Vincent's federal case moved slower. His lawyers negotiated, filed motions, argued that everything he'd done was to protect a domestic violence victim when the legal system failed her. It wasn't a perfect defense, but it was enough to create reasonable doubt. The prosecutors offered a deal: 18 months, house arrest, significant fines, dissolution of certain business operations under federal oversight. Vincent's lawyers said, "Take it." Vincent sat in his study, the deal paperwork in front of him, and stared at Elena. 18 months, he said quietly. That's better than 7 years. It's still 18 months of my life. I know. Vincent's jaw tightened. I'll be under federal supervision. Limited business operations. Restricted travel. It'll destroy half of what I've built. Then we'll rebuild. Elena, we'll rebuild, she repeated firmly. Together. The parts that matter. The parts that are actually worth keeping. Vincent studied her face. You're sure about this? About us? Because 18 months is a long time. I've waited longer for things that mattered less. Despite everything, Vincent smiled. You're insane. So you keep telling me. He signed the papers. 3 days later, Grant's lawyers approached with their own deal. Grant would plead guilty to misdemeanor assault. No jail time, probation, mandatory counseling. In exchange, he'd drop all civil suits against Elena and agree to a permanent restraining order. Catherine Wu said, "Take it." Elena sat in the same chair where Vincent had signed his deal and stared at the paperwork that would end everything. It's not enough, she said quietly. It's justice, Catherine replied. Imperfect justice, but justice nonetheless. He hurt me for 18 months. He gets probation. He gets a criminal record. He loses his reputation. He loses his power. That's not nothing. Elena's hands shook as she picked up the pen. It feels like nothing. I know. But sometimes the system doesn't give us the ending we want. It gives us the ending we can live with. Elena signed. The case is closed. The media moved on to the next scandal, and Elena and Vincent were left standing in the wreckage of everything they'd fought for, trying to figure out what came next. 6 months later, Elena stood in the restored Marquette Theater. Vincent had bought it 4 months earlier under a shell corporation, spent a fortune restoring it to its original glory, then quietly transferred ownership to Elena's name without telling her until the paperwork cleared. You're insane, Elena said when she found out. So you keep telling me. Now she walked across the empty stage, staring up at the vaulted ceiling and the crystal chandeliers that had been dark for 20 years. The theater gleamed, perfect, beautiful, like something out of a dream. Vincent appeared from the wings. What do you think? I think you spent too much money on this. It's an investment. In what? You. Vincent crossed the stage. You said you wanted to restore historic buildings, make them beautiful again. So I bought you one. Elena's throat tightened. Vincent, it's yours, fully. No strings, no conditions. Just a building that needs someone who understands broken things. Tears burned Elena's eyes. Why? Because you saved me. And I don't know how to say thank you except by giving you the things you thought you'd lost forever. Elena pulled him close, kissed him hard. You're going to make me cry in my own theater. Your theater, Vincent repeated, like the words tasted good. I like the sound of that. They stood together on the empty stage, surrounded by the ghosts of a building that had died and lived again, and Elena finally understood what Vincent had been trying to show her all along. Everything broken can be rebuilt. If you're willing to do the work, if you're willing to believe it's worth saving, if you're willing to stand in the ruins and start again. Vincent's 18 months of house arrest passed slowly. He worked from the estate, restructured his businesses, divested from operations that couldn't survive federal oversight, built new things from the ashes of old things. Elena spent her days at the Marquette Theater, hired a small team, started restoration projects. built relationships with historical societies and preservation organizations. Slowly, carefully, rebuilt the reputation Grant had tried to destroy. They existed in separate orbits that intersected every evening when Elena came home and found Vincent in the greenhouse or the study or the kitchen making coffee at midnight because neither of them could sleep. They didn't talk about the future, didn't make plans beyond the next week, just focused on surviving the present and hoping it would eventually become something they could actually live in. Grant's probation ended after 2 years. He moved to California, remarried quickly. Appeared occasionally in society pages looking older and harder around the eyes. Elena never spoke to him again. Some endings weren't dramatic. They were just people moving in different directions until the space between them became too wide to cross. Vincent's house arrest ended on a Tuesday in October. Elena came home to find him standing in the driveway without the ankle monitor for the first time in 18 months. He looked younger somehow, like a weight had been lifted. "Where do you want to go?" Elena asked. "Nowhere." "You've been trapped here for a year and a half. You must want to go somewhere." Vincent pulled her close. "I have everything I want right here." "That's the house arrest talking." "No, that's the truth." They stood in the driveway while autumn leaves fell around them, and Elena realized that somewhere between the elevator and the courthouse, and the theater, and the greenhouse, they'd built something that actually worked. Not perfect, not easy, but real. And real was enough. 3 years after the elevator, Elena stood in the Marquette Theater on opening night. The space glowed, chandeliers blazing, red velvet seats filled with donors and city officials and people who'd supported the restoration. The stage showcased a photography exhibit about rebirth, buildings restored, lives rebuilt, second chances made visible. Vincent stood in the back row, watching Elena give her speech about preservation and beauty and the importance of saving things everyone else had given up on. When she finished, the audience applauded. Elena stepped off the stage and walked through the crowd until she found him. "You're supposed to be up front," she said. "I like the view from back here." "You paid for half of this. You should get credit." "I didn't do it for credit. I did it for you." Elena took his hand. "Come with me." She led him through the theater to the small office she'd claimed as her own, closed the door, turned to face him. "Marry me," she said. Vincent blinked. "What?" "Marry me. I'm terrible at romantic speeches, and I don't have a ring, and this is probably the worst proposal in history, but I don't care. Marry me." Vincent stared at her. "You're serious? Completely." "Elena, I know what you're going to say. That you're not good enough. That I deserve better. That marrying you means tying myself to someone with a criminal record and federal oversight and a past that won't ever completely go away. But I don't care about any of that. I care about you, about us, about building something together that's ours." Vincent's hands framed her face. "You're insane. So you keep telling me. I'm a terrible bet. Good thing I'm not betting. I'm choosing." Vincent's control finally cracked. He kissed her hard enough to bruise, pulled back just far enough to whisper against her mouth. "Yes." Elena's breath caught. "Yes? Yes. I'll marry you, on one condition." "What?" "You let me propose properly later, with a ring and a plan and something better than a conversation in a theater office." Elena laughed. "Deal." They stood holding each other while the opening night celebration continued outside, and for the first time in 3 years, Elena let herself believe they might actually make it, not because everything was perfect, but because they'd survived everything imperfect and come out the other side still choosing each other. But 5 years after the elevator, Elena and Vincent stood in the greenhouse at sunset. It was smaller than a real wedding. Just Sophia and Marco and Catherine and a handful of people who'd stood by them when the world tried to tear them apart. A judge who'd agreed to officiate. Simple vows. No speeches. No grand gestures. Just two people who'd found each other in the worst possible circumstances and refused to let go. When the judge pronounced them married, Vincent kissed Elena like a man who'd finally stopped running from happiness. Afterward, they walked through the gardens while their small group celebrated inside. The sun set over the estate. The greenhouse glowed warm behind them. Everything felt suspended in amber light. I thought stepping into that elevator ruined my life, Elena said quietly. Vincent's arm tightened around her shoulders. And? It was the first right door I ever walked through. For once, Vincent Moretti had no clever response, no calculated control, no armor left. He just held his wife beneath the changing sky and let himself believe in something he'd spent 15 years convinced he didn't deserve. Not redemption, not absolution, just the simple, imperfect grace of being loved despite everything he was and everything he'd done. Elena tilted her face up to his, saw the boy who'd lost his mother, the teenager who'd killed his father, the man who'd built an empire on blood and violence because it was the only language he knew. And she saw the person he'd become when someone finally looked at him and chose to stay. "I love you," she said. Vincent's voice was rough. "I know." "Say it back." "I love you." "Again." "I love you." "One more time." Vincent pulled her closer, pressed his forehead against hers. "I love you, and I'll keep saying it until you stop needing to hear it." "That might take a while." "Good, because I'm not going anywhere." They stood together as the sun set completely, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson, and Elena finally understood the truth about broken things. They don't heal because they become unbroken. They heal because someone decides they're worth keeping despite the cracks. Vincent had kept her when she was broken. She had kept him when he believed he was beyond saving. And together they'd built something new from the wreckage of everything they'd lost. Not perfect, not easy, but theirs. And that was enough. Heck. 10 years after the elevator, Elena stood in the boardroom of the Veil Foundation. The nonprofit she'd built over the last decade focused on two things: historic preservation and supporting domestic violence survivors. The foundation restored buildings and lives with equal care, gave women safe places to go when they had nowhere else, gave them resources to rebuild, gave them hope when the world said they should give up. Vincent served on the board, donated quietly, used his connections for good instead of intimidation, proved that people could change even when everyone said they couldn't. The foundation's latest project was a shelter built inside a restored mansion in Brooklyn. It would house 20 women and their children, provide counseling, job training, legal support, everything Elena wished she'd had when she'd needed it. "We're calling it Casa Maria," Elena told the board. Vincent's hand tightened on hers under the table. After the meeting, they walked to the car together. Vincent was quiet, his jaw tight. "You okay?" Elena asked. "You named it after my mother." "I named it after a woman who deserved better and didn't get it. So maybe we can give that to other women instead." Vincent stopped walking, turned to face her fully. "Thank you." "For what?" "For seeing the good in something I've only ever seen as tragedy." Elena pulled him close. "That's what we do. We take broken things and make them beautiful." "You make them beautiful. I just help." "No, you do more than that. You prove that the past doesn't define the future, that people can grow, that love doesn't have to look like control." Vincent's arms wrapped around her. "I'm still learning." "So am I." They stood on the Brooklyn street while the city moved around them, and Elena thought about the girl who'd run through a hotel corridor bleeding and terrified, convinced her life was over. That girl would never have believed she'd end up here. Married, successful, happy, building something that mattered. But life had a way of surprising you when you stopped running and started fighting. Masamit. The night of Casa Maria's grand opening, Elena stood in the restored ballroom and watched survivors walk through the doors into safety. Women with bruises hidden under makeup, children who'd seen too much, families trying to outrun the monsters in their lives. Elena understood every one of them, had been every one of them. Vincent appeared beside her. "You did this." "We did this." "No, this was your vision. I just provided the resources." "Resources matter." "Not as much as hope." Elena looked up at him. 10 years of marriage. 10 years of building something good from something terrible. 10 years of proving that the worst beginning could still lead somewhere worth going. "Do you ever regret it?" she asked quietly. "The elevator? Everything that came after?" Vincent was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "I regret what you had to survive to get here. I regret that Grant hurt you. I regret that the system failed you, but I don't regret finding you, and I don't regret fighting for you, even when it cost me everything. You didn't lose everything. No. I lost the things that didn't matter and found the thing that did. Elena's throat tightened. That's very poetic for a former criminal. Former alleged criminal. The charges were dropped after 18 months of house arrest. Details, Elena laughed, leaned against him, watched women and children find sanctuary in a building that had been dead for decades before someone decided it was worth saving. Thank you, she whispered. For what? For being the kind of dangerous man who uses his power to protect people instead of hurt them. Vincent pressed a kiss to her temple. Thank you for teaching me the difference. They stood together in Casa Maria while the sun set outside and lives began again inside, and Elena finally made peace with the truth she'd been running from for 10 years. Sometimes the scariest door you walk through leads exactly where you need to go. Sometimes the most dangerous person becomes the safest place. Sometimes broken things fit together better than things that were never damaged at all. And sometimes love doesn't look like poetry or romance or any of the things movies promise. Sometimes it looks like a man in a greenhouse teaching roses to grow again. Like a woman who stops running long enough to fight back. Like two people who survived the worst versions of themselves and chose to become better together. Elena had stepped into that elevator expecting to escape danger. Instead, she'd walked straight into it and found home on the other side. Not despite the danger, but because the right kind of dangerous man knows when to be gentle, when to be fierce, when to hold on, and when to let go. Vincent Moretti had held on when Elena needed stability, and let go when she needed freedom. And in the space between holding and releasing, they'd built something that couldn't be destroyed by lawyers or judges or men who thought power meant control. They'd built love, imperfect, complicated, real. And real was always enough.